for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Very good morning to you. You're watching the Great British Breakfast here on GB News with Paul Hawkins and Isabel Webster. It's just gone 6 o'clock. Coming up on the show this morning.
More COVID travel restrictions are introduced by the government, meaning mandatory testing while Nigeria is added to the red list. So is the government being too cautious, or has it got the right idea?
NHS England's revealed 90% of COVID critical care beds are being occupied by unvaccinated patients. Does that change your mind about getting the jab or introducing tougher restrictions?
Will the Irish Republic's return to lockdown light have a knock-on effect for Northern Ireland? We've got the latest.
And Manchester City returned to the top of the table after another thrilling day in the Premier League. As always, you don't need to go anywhere else for your Sunday sport.
That's all to come right here on the Great British Breakfast.
A very good morning to you. We start with more changes to COVID travel rules, this time from 4 a.m. on Tuesday morning. Anyone entering the UK will have to show proof of a negative PCR or lateral flow test taken before travel, as well as having to self-isolate when you get back until you receive a negative PCR test within 2 days of your arrival. And anyone now arriving from Nigeria from tomorrow morning will have to spend 10 days in a quarantine hotel after the African country was added to the red travel list.
Well, let's get more on this now and some of today's other top stories with the help of the political commentator Jason Reid. A very good morning to you. Thanks for waking up bright and early this morning to join us on the Great British Breakfast. Look, lots of changes every day in this ever ongoing, never-ending COVID saga. Here we are with an extra country, the 10th African country being added to the red list, but perhaps more worryingly for the travel and aviation industry is these increased testing, which is hugely disruptive for travellers.
Exactly, yeah. This is part of the broader strategy to fight against the rise of the Omicron variant that we've seen over the past few days, following on quickly from new mask restrictions. But you're right that the travel industry is very unhappy about this. They're unhappy in particular about the fact that very little notice was given. This was announced yesterday, and it's going to come into force first thing on Tuesday morning. And so the travel industry believes that it was due to have a bit of a boom this month as people waited until the last minute to finalise their Christmas travel plans, but that this might just tip them over the edge of being a little bit too bureaucratic, a little bit too much of a deterrent when it comes to people booking those last-minute getaways for Christmas. And so the travel industry is going to suffer as a result of that, just as it was getting back on its feet after the pandemic. On the other hand, the argument from a health point of view is that you can't wait around to respond to new variants, as we've seen in the past. The worst thing you can do is to delay the measures that have to be implemented. The point about Omicron, of course, is that we know very little about it. We don't have the clinical data yet. We don't know whether it's vaccine resistant. There isn't any evidence to suggest that yet. But the government is keen to get out ahead of it and to slow down the spread. although a cynic might argue that it's already here, it's already going to spread through the population anyway, so perhaps it won't make a huge amount of difference if we're just delaying it by a few weeks.
What's your opinion? Do you think that the government's got it right, or is it being too cautious, going too far too fast?
Well, you can understand where the government's coming from. It doesn't want to repeat past mistakes, especially when it comes to the run-up to Christmas. Last year, when we were told again and again it was one last push to save Christmas, and then, of course, we had very harsh restrictions over Christmas. Anyway, on the other hand, my concern is that these new variants are just going to keep coming, and we know that, I'm not a scientist, but we know that as viruses mutate, it's likely that they become more transmissible, but less deadly as more mutations come. And so if we can't end the pandemic now, if we can't end restrictions now, and we're still panicking every time there's a new variant like this, then it's unclear to me, when will it actually end? When do we actually go back to normal? Most of us in our lifetimes, we've never had to come out of the other end of a pandemic. We've never had to learn to live with a virus like this, but I think that's exactly what we have to do now. And my concern is that this is just going to be a rolling thing where we have the looming threat of lockdown that never goes away, and we dip in and out of these kinds of restrictions around travel and around mask wearing and that kind of thing. And there's a real danger that it just will never end. And that would be a really bad thing, both for the industry, various industries such as the travel industry, and for our basic freedoms.
Sure. And look, our GBNews viewers will have their own opinions on whether or not this is a panic or, in fact, the act of a responsible government, as you say, just trying to slow the pace of it to buy some time whilst that research is done. But we heard from the Health Secretary when he was announcing these changes yesterday, also urging people to step up, come forward, get their booster jab, very much describing that as the first line of defence. It's a big ask. We're hearing that at the moment, the NHS England figures said that 90% of critical care beds in England are being taken up by the unvaccinated. There does seem to be a step change, a bit more pressure, people to try and get their vaccinations.
Yeah, the booster jab sort of stumbled at the first hurdle. It was very slow getting started, but the government has now really thrown its weight behind it and is very keen, as you say, to see as many people take up the booster jab as quickly as possible. My instinct with this is that although I think getting the booster jab is a great thing and everyone should do it, it does feel a little bit like the government is just throwing a huge amount at the wall to see what sticks. Because when it comes to the first two vaccine doses, we knew from the very start of the pandemic that we were waiting and hoping for a vaccine to come along, and that when it did, that would make a huge difference in terms of being able to lift restrictions, being able to go back to normal. Whereas with boosters, the problem is that very much along the same lines as mask wearing and travel restrictions and that kind of thing, it's unclear where it ends. If we need a booster to fight against these variants, then what about in a year, 2 years' time, when there's another round of variants and there's another round of panic and another round of restrictions? Do we then just have to have vaccines every year? And perhaps that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think there has to come a point where we draw a line and we say we have to move on from this now, because otherwise we're just going to continue living in fear forever, and I don't think that's sustainable.
Jason, let's talk about the heartbreaking case of 6-year-old Arthur Labino Hughes. It's invoked a lot of emotions for a lot of people this week. His stepmother being given a life sentence and the father getting 21 years for manslaughter. And those sentences are to be reviewed, apparently. And Boris Johnson ordering a wide-ranging inquiry into the role of police, social services, schools and the probation watchdog in safeguarding. What do you make of that, given when these kind of cases have arisen in the past? I'm thinking of cases like Victoria Climbié and Baby P. We've had these inquiries and it doesn't seem to have changed anything.
Well, the government is making all the right noises, but exactly as you say, we just hope that there will be something different this time, that we will actually be able to learn some lessons this time round. The sentences are going to be reviewed, as you say, but I think the more interesting part, more interesting than the legal part of this, is the social and political review that Boris Johnson is set to announce details of today, which is going to look into why this wasn't prevented and why these kinds of tragic cases keep coming up. In particular, the fact that there were so many warnings given from other family members, from teachers, about the way that Arthur was being treated. And the just went unheard. Social workers even visited Arthur's house and concluded that everything was fine and there was nothing to investigate and no action needed to be taken. Of course, we all know the tragic consequences of that. I'm a little bit sceptical, as you are, that we will actually learn anything from this inquiry, that we will actually be able to take any action and see anything change in the future. But at the same time, perhaps we should go into it with an open mind and see what the inquiry actually comes out with, because we really do need to look much deeper into this kind of thing. I'm reminded not too long ago of the Sarah Everard case, where we talked about the need for change in the Metropolitan Police and in the police more broadly. And that never really came, and there wasn't really an inquiry and investigation. So perhaps we can learn lessons from that with this case of Arthur, and to have an investigation that actually does bear some fruit.
You know, I wonder if it's possible, Jason, in the case of Arthur, to do as the government is hoping and separate the issue of lockdown from his case, because yesterday local councils were being urged not to use lockdowns as an excuse for any potential failings. I know that schools are being questioned as part of this investigation. Is it possible to separate the two, given the enormous pressure that families were under during unprecedented times? Any problems in a family unit were really exposed and rooted out during lockdown. And we heard time and again, didn't we, that domestic abuse went through the roof during that period. And I would just wonder whether or not there are some questions for Boris Johnson's own policy when it comes to this particular case.
Well, certainly one of the main areas of focus of the investigation will have to be the effect that lockdown had on this case. And indeed, I believe the investigation, it's already been announced that the investigation will consider whether there are specific new guidelines around safeguarding that should be introduced in case there is any future lockdown, to guard against exactly this sort of thing happening. But I think you're absolutely right. It's going to be difficult to separate those issues, because the issue of lockdown inevitably is so polarized, it's so political, that you have to somehow remove the political aspects from looking at a case like this, which is not political at all, which is just tragic. And I don't know if you can do that. I think it'll be incredibly difficult for the government to do that and for the investigation to do that. Even if it does, it's hard to see how the discourse more broadly responding to the findings of that investigation will be able to remove the political from the tragic. But we'll just have to wait and see whether we're able to do that and do everything we can to make sure that this doesn't become politicised, I think, because that would be a real danger here.
Yeah, just finally, Jason, quick word on the Labour Party suspending Deputy Leader Angela Rayner's head of communications, reportedly for on suspicion of, placed under investigation, I should say. This is Jack McKenna, on suspicion of a personal data breach relating to another Labour staff member. Not good for the rift that appears to be growing between Sir Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner. And of course, the Labour Party, Angela Rayner, Sir Keir Starmer can't sack Angela Rayner because she's voted in by the members.
Exactly. Yeah, this is Jack McKenna, Angela Rayner's head of communications, who's responsible for speech writing, for liaising with the media, a very senior and important aide. He denies any wrongdoing in this case. And of course, the allegation against Keir Starmer is that this is a political move, that he is trying to undermine Angela Rayner and start to question her authority publicly and begin to push her out. But exactly as you say, the problem with the Labour deputy leadership position is that it's directly elected. And exactly as we saw with Jeremy Corbyn and his deputy, Tom Watson, it's inevitable that you're going to get a leader and a deputy from different wings of the party. And so these rifts grow, and it means that the internal conflicts within the Labour Party just get magnified because both wings of the party have a very clear leader in either the leader of the party or the deputy leader, a kind of figure they can rally around. And it means that the leadership of the party is constantly under question. It means that there isn't a clear direction because the Labour Party continues to look inwards rather than looking outwards. It continues to occupy itself with these internal disputes. And so that means, as we've seen this criticism levelled at Keir Starmer again and again, that means that they're not seen as in touch with the country, they're not seen as in touch with the issues and what people care about because they're too busy fighting among themselves. And the situation with Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner doesn't look like it's going to improve in that sense anytime soon.
Interesting. Jason, thank you for joining us at 6:13 on a Sunday morning. Really appreciate it. Jason Reid there from Young Voices UK.
Time now to take a look at what else is making the headlines. And new figures from NHS England show more than 90% of patients requiring specialist care to help them breathe have not had the COVID vaccine. Doctors and nurses are concerned about the knock-on effect this is having on other treatment, especially for cancer and transplant patients, with NHS waiting lists growing to 5.8 million people by the end of September.
The Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, says he remains concerned for the thousands of people still without power 8 days after Storm Arwen swept through Scotland and North East England. More wintry weather is expected to affect the area over the next few days, with 4,700 homes still waiting to be reconnected to the national grid.
President Biden will hold an emergency video call with his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, on Tuesday to try to ease the growing tension over Ukraine. US Secretary of State Andrew Blinken claims to have seen evidence Russia are preparing a large-scale attack on Ukraine following the largest military build-up on the border since the Russians annexed Crimea in 2014.
Lewis Hamilton's hopes of winning a record 8th Formula One World Championship were helped by a crash for title rival Max Verstappen in qualifying for today's Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Hamilton will start in pole position with Verstappen in third, although the Red Bull driver could yet be given a further grid penalty if he needs to replace a damaged gearbox. Paul Coyte will have more on that and all the rest of the sport, all the reaction to yesterday's Premier League action later on this morning.
And today's weather: sunshine in the northwest, but cloud and showers elsewhere, and highs of 7 degrees. Flood warnings are in place for the early part of the week.
A very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us on the Great British Breakfast. Could there be unexpected consequences for Northern Ireland when the Republic returns to strict COVID restrictions on Tuesday?
Well, commercially, there is expected to be an upturn as people cross the border to take advantage of looser COVID rules. But is the potential price a rise in the rate of coronavirus cases? And what pressure is being put on the Northern Ireland executive thanks to the actions of the Dublin government?
Well, our Northern Ireland reporter Doogie Beattie has more on this.
My message this evening is a difficult one. It is difficult because even though Ireland has done very well as a country and you have done everything that has been asked of you, we have received some very stark advice from our Chief Medical Officer and our public health experts that requires the reintroduction of a number of restrictions. From the 7th of December until the 9th of January, nightclubs will close. Strict social distancing will be required in all bars and restaurants, including hotels, and they must all revert to the situation that was in place before the 22nd of October.
The words of the Irish Taoiseach after he tries to get control of a spike in the COVID virus. While the Republic of Ireland imposed tighter restrictions, many of their citizens, unfettered, come north for shopping, nights out and entertainment. The Northern Ireland executive have went head-to-head with its hospitality industry over COVID passports and insists it can trace the visitors from the south.
Well, actually, one of the things that we have in place, again, in the last few weeks that we didn't have this time last year, was the sharing of not just passenger locator form in regards to all international travellers who are now coming in through Dublin. That's been shared through our public health agencies as well. But it's also, there is a requirement on all hospitality to take contact details of anyone entering them. So that's irrespective of COVID certification or not. That's already part of the requirement that is there and is established.
While southern restrictions will no doubt increase numbers coming north, the hospitality industry sees problems ahead.
And I know people will say, I've cried poverty now for almost 2 years through COVID. The government support we got because we made the case has really helped, and we're really grateful for it. But it's all stopping. At the end of the financial year, the rent protection stops, the insolvency protection stops. VAT will probably let you go back to 20%, rates will come back in. And if we don't get Christmas period to make some money, we'll not survive that.
There's the Executive COVID Recovery Task Force, which is based in the Executive Office. They've been carrying out very specific engagement with the sectors, and I'm sure that the hospitality industry and others that are raising concerns that the Executive COVID Task Force will work to try to address those.
The Executive now finds itself in an awkward place, welcoming visitors from outside its borders, while putting pressure on its own to uphold challenged legislation. The Chief Medical Officer tried to stay clear of politics and stressed the importance of vaccine and just how far we have came.
Well, all pandemics come to an end when a sufficient number of the people in the population are immune, and preferably through vaccination. And we're making huge strides, as the Minister has said, with our vaccination programme. Over 3 million doses of a vaccine that hadn't been invented this time last year. So let's be in no doubt we're making progress, and we have the capacity to modify the current vaccines if indeed that becomes apparent with the Omicron variant.
Dougie Beattie, GB News, Belfast.
Stay with us here on the Great British Breakfast. Coming up, we will have the front pages for this Sunday's newspapers with the broadcaster and journalist Andrew Ebourne. But first, here's your forecast.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Well, the UK is looking rather cloudy and showery in the east, but brighter in the west. Let's take a look at the details. A few showers will feed into Cornwall in the brisk northerly wind, but elsewhere across southwest England, it's dry with some sunshine. It will feel chilly, though, in the breeze. Meanwhile, a much cloudier day is expected across the southeast of England, and here it will be rather showery too, with a gusty northerly wind. Pembrokeshire could catch an isolated shower, but for the rest of Wales, it's looking dry and bright, albeit quite chilly and breezy here too. Moving over to the Midlands, we can expect an east to west split. Towards the east, there'll be a fair amount of cloud giving some showers, whereas further west, most places should stay dry with some bright weather at times. In the northeast, showers could merge to give some more persistent rain with hill snow. Across this part of the country, the wind will begin to ease, so it won't feel quite as cold. Some showers will continue to feed into the east and southeast of Scotland, but for the rest of the country, there'll be lots of sunshine around. Looking at Northern Ireland, it's likely to see the sunniest weather of all, though, and the wind, I should say, will be noticeably lighter than elsewhere across the UK. During the afternoon and evening, it will become largely dry with clear spells and a frost. And that is how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back. It is 6:23. Let's take a look at your Sunday morning front pages, shall we? Here is The Independent. It's featuring an exclusive that senior Tories demand a radical overhaul of the asylum system to cut the numbers of people attempting dangerous channel crossings.
Sunday Times leads on pressure felt by doctors and nurses as a result of COVID-19, reporting new figures showing more than 90% of virus sufferers requiring specialist care are unvaccinated.
Here's the Sunday Mirror. They are speaking to grieving families that lost loved ones during the pandemic who have expressed their anger following claims that Christmas parties were held at number 10 Downing Street during lockdown.
While The Observer looks at how public trust in politicians has fallen dramatically since Boris Johnson became Prime Minister, according to a poll from YouGov, 63% of voters believe politicians were merely out for themselves in the wake of the Owen Paterson affair. We'll be talking about that in just a moment.
Here is the Sunday Telegraph. Their political editor is claiming the first at-home COVID treatment could be offered to patients by Christmas. The rollout of the antiviral pill will protect the most vulnerable from the Omicron variant, and it also shows a picture there of Prince William, who says he starts his week by listening to rock music, including AC/DC.
I'm with Prince William on that. I've recently been listening
your
to
taste in music.
I've been recently listening to Back to Black. Tell me that's not a good song.
Oh no, that is a good song, but I think there's a more recent version of that, Back to Black, by Amy Winehouse.
Is there?
No?
Right.
Anyway,
we'll come back to that. Sunday Express, yes, reporting on Prince William's childhood memories of his mother Diana, Princess of Wales. He recalls how they would sing along to Tina Turner's Simply the Best to calm his anxiety.
That is a tune.
Yeah, you like it, don't you?
Tune. Yeah, bless him.
Yeah, that was to calm his anxiety before starting boarding school.
He's doing a lot, actually, isn't he, at the moment, about talking about his anxiety and ways of working out his stress and things. He's a really good ambassador for all of that.
Yeah.
Here is the Mail on Sunday. It describes the prince's torment after witnessing the aftermath of a devastating accident involving a young boy. The headline reads, William's mental health crisis left him feeling as if the whole world was dying. And, of course, with his own personal trauma of losing his mother, I'm sure that was very triggering for him.
Yeah, so lots on Prince William this morning. The Sunday People, though, calling for a change in the law following the death of 6-year-old Arthur Labino. Hughes, Paula Hudgell, adopted mother of double amputee Tony Hudgell, who suffered horrific abuse at the hands of his biological parents, calls for a child abuser register.
Very good idea. And on a lighter note, the Daily Star often has totally different headlines, front pages to the rest of the press. They have a strictly, I'm a Celebrity exclusive about how footballing legend David Ginola communicated with a ghost during a séance.
I understand why you wanted to say I'm a celebrity, because he's in I'm a Celebrity, isn't he, David Ginola? So I understand why you wanted to say that.
Did it not say that in the script?
Didn't
Did I
say
make that up?
No, but I can understand why you went there. Yeah. Right, journalist and broadcaster Andrew Ebourne is with us this morning. Andrew, a very good morning to you.
Very good morning to you both.
I know, and it is only, 25:06 on a Sunday morning.
Who worries about time, though? Back to Black, by the way, is a brilliant song by Amy Winehouse
It is,
and
isn't
others.
it?
I never thought of that. So there's an AC/DC version and, of course, the Amy Winehouse version.
You stopped listening to music in about 1987, didn't you? And you stuck there, so sorry.
Well, later on today, I'll take you through the potential Christmas number ones, but I wanted to start with a really good story.
Yes.
And to show that all of a sudden we've all become experts in this country about, beforehand it used to be about environmentalists, and we then used to be experts on constitution. Everybody now is a virologist, and everybody's got an opinion.
Yeah, it's like football, isn't it? Everyone's got an opinion on it. Everyone's an expert.
And I love to hear opinions as long as they're informed opinions.
Yeah.
And so there's a couple of stories. One, first of all, the great story which there is in the Telegraph about the rollout of this antiviral pill. Great stuff before Christmas, that you can get all the symptoms of coronavirus, but you can take this pill and feel better. So really good story. Balance that against what they're saying in the Times about the 90% of critical cases in hospital are as a result of people who have not been vaccinated. And if you look at that and talk about an informed decision, and I believe that everybody has the right to make a personal choice. You've got a right to make a personal choice, freedom of choice, but not freedom from consequences. And these are the consequences.
Yeah, it's about being responsible as well, isn't it? And not being selfish. And, you know, these people who have decided not to be vaccinated and who are taking up these critical care beds, have they thought about their relatives if they get in a car crash or they need a critical care bed, the impact? We all want to have a functioning and usable emergency service, don't we? Anyway, that's a rant over from me, but it just seems to me that the two can't
But you have to have a rant. I say this is the channel where people can have their rants, they can have their views. What I love about it, it's a war. It's a war against the virus, and in any war, the first casualty is the truth. So what I love are there these conspiracy theories. You know, Omicron, if you have the variants, Omicron B would be no crimbo.
Yeah.
That's an anagram.
That
is. Omicron B is no
Did you do that
crimbo.
yourself?
No, absolutely, that's true.
very good.
Omicron is actually an anagram of moronic. So
Yes,
all
yes.
people are looking
Right,
at that.
okay.
What I also love, we were talking about Joe Biden earlier. Joe Biden, and nobody's mentioned this, is an anagram of be joined. In a world when we're so divided, to be joined.
If only he was joining.
Well, I think, but my point on this is that we need to tackle, it's not just a local issue, it's a global pandemic. And it's no good being double jabbed and jabs army and all these wonderful jokes that people come up with. The world needs to be protected.
Yeah.
And because when I talk about being divided, that's what the world is at the moment. We need to be joined.
Yeah.
So Joe Biden, be joined.
Yeah.
And let's be joined against this war.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you know what? Omicron, for all that we loathe it and find ourselves talking about it, I wonder if any of the residents of Number 10 felt a little bit of delight when the new variant was announced, because it was a very useful distraction away from the relentless Tory sleaze headlines that have been dominating for day after day after day.
And then just as the Christmas party story was starting to build
it was a good
as
distraction,
well.
but you know, public faith has been eroded, hasn't it, by these sort of allegations?
Well, absolutely. And there's a wonderful movie, which I always cite, called Wag the Dog, with Dustin Hoffman.
Oh, is it good?
It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant, because I mean, who would have ever thought of it? It's about a politician who basically creates a war to distract about a sexual scandal. Now, that would never happen.
No.
Whatever next. But do look at that. And the whole thing about all of these, and the point I always make, is question everything. Have a look at that sort of side. And talking about question everything, Meghan, she got a victory. Hurrah, hurrah for Meghan. It's always nice to be balanced, isn't it? But a lot of people have misunderstood what that victory actually means. It's about Associated Newspapers. And they reproduced in one of their publications a lot of the Thomas Markle letter which he received from Meghan. Now, the thing has been wrongly reported because people don't really understand the real issues. The real issue is twofold. As you know, my background is as a lawyer and specialise in intellectual property. There are two issues.
Here we go.
Thank you. I'll tell you what the issues are. One is obviously about privacy, and the other is about copyright. Copyright is a really powerful right, which gives you the right to determine what happens to your work. So if you write something down, you get copyright in your written letters. If somebody reproduces that without your permission, that's an infringement of the copyright. Now, what the court didn't find, and this is where the press have got it all wrong, they didn't say that it was wrong to report about the division between the Duchess and her father. What they said is that they reproduced too much of that letter. So for freedom of the press, which is essential in a democracy, for freedom of the press, we need to be able to have freedom of expression. We need to be able to report those things. You can do that. And in fact, what the relevant person said, the master of the rolls, Geoffrey Voss, he said, whilst it might have been proportionate to publish a very small part of the letter for that purpose, it was not necessary to publish half the contents of the letter as Associated Newspapers had done.
Right.
So it's not the end of freedom of speech. It's not a Pyrrhic, it's not a victory for everybody. It really is going back to a fundamental right. You've got copyright, you've got a right of privacy. Those rights are preserved.
With your lawyer hat on, can they appeal that?
Well, this is why it was decided on a summary judgment, because the defence that they put up, and this is what people have not properly reported either, that would never have been a defence anyway. So it doesn't matter whether Jason Knauf, and that is how you pronounce his name, the knives are out, the K is not silent, nobody's silent in this case. The revelation that, oh yes, he was sort of instructed to leak stuff, it was never a defence anyway.
Yeah.
So when you're understanding the case, that's what you need to look at. What are the real issues? I always say question everything.
So that's the end of this case then? There's no appeal?
They've talked about going to the Supreme Court, which is the next level up.
Yeah, exactly.
Going. And the best thing for Meghan and the royal family is that it didn't go to court. Because if it goes to court, all of this
stuff comes out.
If you were her lawyer, that would be your advice then to her.
If I was a lawyer, well, if she could afford me.
She probably can for their Netflix deals and book deals and everything else.
My advice to all these people is, look, as lawyers, we all can put the devil's advocate, we can put whatever side there is. There are good cases and bad cases. I'm available for hire.
Yeah.
Both sides.
Andrew, moving on, there is a new poll out that says, shock horror, trust in politics has fallen. Now, I always assume that the public's poll, and I always thought the public's trust in politicians was at about naught anyway, so I'm not sure.
I'll tell you what, it's the old thing, isn't it? They always used to say that how can you tell when a politician's lying? because their lips are moving.
Yeah.
That's what they used to say. And the reality is that politics now, and trust in politicians, is at an all-time low. It is this new poll with YouGov, which says just 5% say MPs work for the public good. 5%. In 2014, David Cameron, 48% believed politicians were out merely for themselves. That went up to 57% in May 21, and it was 63% last week. And this is obviously off the back of things like the Patterson affair, it's off the back of double jobs, it's off the back of Christmas parties, all those sort of things. But it is cross-party. And I think some of this, the real concern is what happens in politics. And if people don't get interested in politics, then we've got a real problem. And you've got, for example, my concern in any election is so often the biggest winner is apathy. And if you have a look at the old Bexley and Sidcup turnout, of course, Louis French, the only French victory there was going to be. You could, I thank you, everyone's a winner. We're here all week, it's got to be good. But what happens is the turnout was only 34%.
By-elections always have low turnout.
They do, you're right. But we want to get people engaged. And what I love, there's a great story which deserves the oxygen of publicity in Belfast. And in Belfast, Esin Nwosu was mayor for a day. She was given mayor for a day, which I love this story, because you can see the picture of her with the things. Her pledges, this is what I love. I think about planting more trees in Belfast. I will make sure young people like me have a voice, and I'm not doing this for myself. I'm doing this for everybody who lives in Belfast.
Do you know what? We love that story so much. We're going to return to it in the next hour.
Yeah.
That's okay, because we want to hear more about the being mayor for a day in Belfast.
Okay.
So we'll do that in the next hour.
Andrew Ebourne, it's been a pleasure. We'll see you again shortly.
Andrew.
Thank you very much indeed. Now, we've been touching on this story already this morning. New figures from NHS England show more than 90% of COVID patients in need of the most specialist care are the unvaccinated.
Yeah, intensive care clinicians from across England have spoken over the pressure they have because of this. The figures also show that between 20 to 30% of critical care beds in England are occupied by COVID patients. Meanwhile, a new campaign has been launched to encourage pregnant women to get their coronavirus vaccine, with a video showing a few of them who suffered serious complications from COVID telling their stories.
Well, founder of the discreet boutique, Lucy Rook, who has herself hesitated to have the jab, joins us now. Very good morning to you, Lucy. Just to explain what discreet boutique is, I believe it's a sort of breastfeeding underwear specialist shop, just in case minds were boggling about exactly what that was. You know, it's a very, very natural thing, I think, as a mother, if you're pregnant, to be hesitant. And I want to be careful how I phrase it. But it's a very natural thing to question it, to worry about doing harm to your unborn baby. Is that the view that...
That's right, yeah. When I was pregnant, and I'm sort of going back sort of 9 months now, I was doing research at the time. At that time, I wasn't in the eligible age bracket to have the vaccine. But yeah, I was doing research online. But then for me, I had Rafferty, and then I got called up to have the vaccination a few weeks after. And at that time then, the advice from the scientists and the government was that the vaccine was okay for breastfeeding mothers and pregnant mums. And my instinct is to trust the scientists. So I did, you know, when that advice was that it was okay, I did then have the vaccination, and now we're double jabbed, and we hope that Rafferty's got some of those, you know, some of that immunity from me.
Well, thank goodness Rafferty's had his mummy healthy and able to take good care of him. He's looking very bonny on it too, isn't he? Gorgeous. So how old is he now?
Yeah. Pardon?
How old's Rafferty now, sorry?
He's 8 months.
He's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. Thank you for bringing him in the shot. Of course, the reason this is so important is so many pregnant women are having very traumatic third trimesters, ends to their pregnancy, because they haven't been getting the vaccine, and they're immunocompromised because they have this baby growing inside them, and they're having very nasty experiences of COVID, aren't they?
Yes, they are. I mean, I've watched the video that you're referring to, and you know, it's harrowing really when you hear some of the experiences. And I think what's so powerful about this video is it's real life. It's sort of science fact rather than science fiction. And I think when we can see that, you know, the frontline practitioners talking about what's going on, and we're hearing those real experiences from pregnant women and women that have had their babies that have had these awful experiences. I think actually that's where the persuading power is. It's not politicians and their slogans. And I think that's perhaps what this group of women that still needs some convincing. I think that's what they need to hear more of.
Yeah, Rafferty's got a lot to say, hasn't he?
He's got an opinion on that.
He is great, isn't
He's
he?
gorgeous.
But yeah, some people are going to see this video and some people will call it scaremongering. Do you have friends who are still hesitant, who don't want to get the vaccine? Do you have difficult conversations with them, or do you amicably disagree?
Yeah, so because of Discreet Boutique, which sells breastfeeding clothes, but we also offer a lot of online advice on our website. So we've got quite a good network with new moms, and yesterday actually we did a bit of a social media straw poll, sort of knowing that we were going to come on this morning. Now, that's by no means any sort of scientific-based evidence, but I think there certainly has been a shift. I think from sort of going back to when I was pregnant, there was a lot more hesitancy in my view. But there still was about 20% of women that are still quite reluctant. Do I think that they'll think this video is scaremongering? I think, you know what, there's always going to be a percentage of people that are vaccine hesitant, and I think, you know, we're never going to get away from that. But I think actually a lot of the scepticism sort of comes from what they think that the politicians might be trying to convince us. And I think this video is going to go quite a long way in convincing that group of women, just because they are hearing from pregnant women like themselves, from frontline workers. And I think that's really important to get that sort of authentic message across.
Well done you, Lucy Rook, for speaking out and spreading the word. And, you know, mums are really important, but they're never more important than at the end of their pregnancy in those early days as well.
Yeah.
Really
and thank you to Rafferty as well.
Yeah, star appearance. We loved it, especially bright and early as well.
Thank you for speaking to us this
Rafferty.
morning. Really appreciate it.
Gorgeous.
Right, coming up, it is just coming up. It's in fact exactly bang on 20 to 7. We're going to have the latest sport headlines with Paul Coy. Paul, what's happening? Lots of reaction to yesterday's results, I imagine.
Yeah, there is. Absolutely. I mean, I'm getting broody here anyway. Well, guys, we see a new Formula One champion. We could see a new Formula One champion crowd today. Lewis Hamilton goes wheel to wheel for the title with Max Verstappen in the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, and we will have more after this.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Well, good morning. West Ham dealt Chelsea, I think we could say, a serious dent to their title hopes after it was a five-goal thriller. It was a five-goal thriller at the London Stadium. Late goal from Arthur Masuaku, well, which I think he meant gave West Ham the victory. He did actually say he didn't really mean to score. I think I'd probably take it if I was him. The loss leaves Chelsea now in third, but still only 2 points behind the new league leaders, who are Manchester City. Now, despite the positive result, West Ham boss David Moyes refused to get over-excited.
Well, I think that gives us a chance of, I wouldn't say being successful, but certainly not being a poor team. I think if you've got the determination, the character to keep it going. And it was tough at times. I was really disappointed to lose the second goal just before half-time, because we'd got back in the game and we were in the middle of, we lose a player just right on half-time, and it looked as if we were going to lose Kirk as well at that time as well. So we really just had a bad sort of 3 or 4 minutes where we couldn't really get things together. But I thought the resilience of the players, we tried to fix it a little bit at half-time and make it better. And thankfully we got there.
He seems quite calm, but I think he was quite excited, to be honest with you. Manchester City then claimed the top spot of the Premier League with a convincing win over Claudio Ranieri's Watford yesterday. So Bernardo Silva scored twice, one worldy goal, putting him out of the match display to help the English reigning champions take all 3 points back to Manchester. Pep Guardiola said after the game that his side had reached their highest standard as they reclaimed the top spot for the first time since they won the league in May. Now, elsewhere, the newly boosted Newcastle United finally got their first win of the season against Burnley, thanks to a lone Callum Wilson goal. Burnley manager Sean Dyche discussed how, despite the loss, experience in the relegation battle will suit his side a little better.
The league table, it's not about them, it's about us. That continues to be the challenge. That's clear-minded focus from us as a group and my players. It's our challenge. It's nothing to do with anyone else. They can all look after themselves. It's our job to look after ourselves. We've been down this road before, unfortunately, where we've had to work and we've had to keep the right mentality. You could see today there's definitely the right mentality. I mean, there's no lack in that, and you can see at Wolves there was as well. It's just adding them quality moments and finding them key moments. But we've done it before, so it's important we remember that and reference it and use it wisely going forwards.
Sean Dyche there. So in other games, it seemed to be late goals galore. It really was. Neil Mopai scored it was the 98th minute to salvage a point for Brighton in the South Coast derby against Southampton as they drew 1-1. Divock Origi scored a last-minute winner. This is what the big clubs seem to do, you see. Last-minute winners. They sunk Wolverhampton Wanderers at Molineux as Liverpool won that game 1-0. Now, today's games see 3 games kick off at 2 o'clock. Leeds United square off with former Championship rivals Brentford this afternoon. Ralph Rangnick takes his first game in charge of Manchester United for their clash with Crystal Palace. And Tottenham Hotspur play bottom-placed Norwich City. The late game is at 4:30, which sees Steven Gerrard face his former manager, if you remember Brendan Rodgers, who were taking charge of Liverpool a few years ago, as Aston Villa face Leicester. While Everton and Arsenal fans, they're going to wait till Monday night to see their teams meet. Now, the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. This is going to be some race. We'll see. Lewis Hamilton start 2 places ahead of Championship rival Max Verstappen. Lewis claimed pole position. It was a blistering qualifying session that saw his Mercedes teammate Valtteri Bottas finishing second. Max Verstappen could have been in first, though, had he avoided a mistake which left his Red Bull smashing into the wall on the final lap. And for what this actually could mean for the close of the title race and the penultimate clash of the season, Formula One commentator, presenter and our friend Rosanna Tennant joins us now. Morning, Rosanna.
Good morning. It's going to be an exciting day. I'm already looking forward to the race later on.
I'm not surprised. And it was an exciting day yesterday as well. I mean, could this have actually been a defining moment in the Drivers' Championship, what we saw with Max Verstappen hitting that wall yesterday?
Yeah, yesterday Max Verstappen was on an absolute storming lap. If he had completed it, it probably would have been one of the laps of the year, maybe even of the whole sort of debacle between Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, and it will go down in history. But of course, it all came undone on that final turn, turn 27, hit the wall. I think it could be defining. I think it'll definitely, and I say this because anything could happen in this crazy season we're witnessing, it should definitely push the title battle straight through to next weekend in Abu Dhabi, because Max Verstappen could have won here, could have taken the championship if he'd outscored Lewis by 18 points. But he's given himself a job to do if he's to do that today. So I'm hoping it means the title battle is going to go all the way to the wire next weekend.
We've been talking about this for a couple of weeks now. So do you have that funny feeling that it's got, don't want to put the muckers on it or anything, but you have a feeling that maybe this is going Lewis Hamilton's way now, with only a couple of races to go?
Yeah, the word in the paddock now is that this is Lewis Hamilton's to lose, which sounds a bit crazy given that he's 8 points behind Max Verstappen. But he's really come out fighting. He's had his back against the wall in a couple of the races that we've seen recently, but he's come out fighting and he's absolutely delivered when it matters. And he's been backed up by Valtteri Bottas, his teammate at Mercedes. They're in a really strong position this afternoon. It does seem like Lewis Hamilton is going to take his 8th world title. But hey, look, you can't predict anything in this game. We go to some race weekends and we say, oh, this is a Mercedes track or this is a Red Bull track, and the absolute opposite is true. So rip up the form book and just get ready to enjoy some incredible racing. Just 2 races left.
Really good for the sport, isn't it? Because there's been times over the past couple of years where there's some fans and some people that are sort of like take a passing interest at watching F1 are thinking, it's pretty boring, the same thing's happening. I mean, there are a lot of people that are not big fans that are suddenly now coming over, which is a great thing.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really reignited the interest in the sport. I think the problem with domination, whilst we should celebrate it, it often leads to some boring races, some boring seasons. And when Lewis Hamilton was dominating, he was often only fighting his teammate. We saw that with Nico Rosberg, of course, Nico Rosberg managing to beat him to the title in 2016. But now they're battling between teams. It's far more interesting. Lewis Hamilton versus Max Verstappen. And we've also seen some rogue podium finishes as well this year. We've seen 13 different drivers on the podium. So I think that has just really reignited the interest in the sport, got people excited on a Sunday afternoon. And I hope that will continue into next year when the rules and regulations change. Sometimes people can get put off by that. But what we're seeing between these two titans of the sport, I hope, can really fuel the interest in Formula One, because it is certainly has been very exciting.
For being at the moment, Rosanna, really good to speak to you. Thanks very much for your time as always. Rosanna Tennant there, and you can hear what happens a little later this afternoon from Saudi Arabia. That's it for the sport for now. We're back in an hour. Harry Redknapp joins us a little bit later, but now back to Paul and Isabel.
Thank you very much, Paul. It is 10 to 7. You're with the Great British Breakfast. Let's have a look at some of the big business stories with our resident expert, Michael Wilson. Michael, a very good morning to you, and not a good morning, though, for the travel industry.
No, and a very, very strongly worded statement from British Airways about the latest restrictions, talking about a hammer blow for the industry and completely out of step with other countries as well. It's whether you believe we ought to be invoking these kind of knee-jerk reactions to what's going on, or whether a more measured response is necessary. When I think you got comments in from your viewers last weekend about this addition of South Africa, as it then was, which was the first sort of indication to the red list, a lot of people were saying it's quite right that we should defend our borders from this new variant until there is time to work out exactly what it is. And I think what we've been seeing last week, and this latest business about people actually having people from overseas, I mean, this is the crucial thing, coming to this country and then having to stay in a hotel for 10 days whilst they self-isolate. I mean, that will not be great fun. And never mind that, it's also very expensive if it happens to be a big family coming over here. So really, we're almost back to square one with this. The travel industry is getting hit again. Of course it is. We knew this. We knew this the first time around. What the defence of this is that the government is saying is it will, in inverted commas, buy time for scientists to take a look at this. And, it is incredible, isn't it? Over the past week, as we all do, we look very closely at the news, we look closely at the stories and so on. And there have been so many conflicting ideas about what this variant actually is, whether it's powerful, whether the vaccines cope with it or not, and unfortunately, the news cycle is such that somebody has to be there to almost provide a comment minute by minute about what's going on. I mean, unfortunately, if we were really being sensible about this, we'd shut everything down for a week and just see what happened and then take a view from there. But this is what's happening. It's not good. It's the government buying time.
Yeah, it is incredibly frustrating, of course, because it just feels never-ending, I'm sure, especially to the aviation industry. The other story this morning that you've picked is this. Obviously, we're all very concerned about rising costs, putting pressure on household budgets. But there's some suggestion from experts that actual inflation for many households is sometimes up to 3 times higher than that 4.2% official figure.
It is. Basically, what we're looking at, right? So the 4.2% is what's called the CPI, the Consumer Prices Index, and that's the preferred measure of inflation right now. That is still itself 2% above the target which the Bank of England set itself many years ago to try to keep an idea, because I think that 2% inflation is about right for an economy about the size of the UK, and it similarly happens in Europe as well. So it's now 4.2%, so it's twice that. But the additional thing that this survey is all about is saying that some of the prices over which we have no control, housing, energy, water, electricity, fuel, as in what you put in your car, we don't have any control over those prices at all. And unfortunately, the poorer segment of families tend to spend the majority of their income on these unavoidable items. So that means that any price rises like this tend to hit the poorest worst. Now, if a lot of your expenditure, for example, is on travel, you'd find your inflation rate was over 9%. If you're buying a lot of clothes, you'll find it's actually fallen by 0.4%. So it's putting these broad brushstrokes about what's happening with price rises doesn't really help anybody. But the point of this is it's saying that many households will look at what the government has to act on, what the Bank of England has to act on, this 4.2%, and say that's rubbish. We're spending much more than that compared with a year ago, compared with 2 years ago. That's the point, and it's very valid indeed. So it's all basically, life's about personal experiences, isn't it, rather than broad brushstrokes.
Yeah. What's this, just finally, Michael, about, I saw this during the week, that the London Mayor, Sadiq Khan, suggesting that he could potentially completely close the tube line in London because he's running out of money, essentially, for Transport for London. And they're asking the government for more money in the form of another bailout, and they've had some already.
They have. They had a bailout in the first part of the pandemic. Thereafter, I think it's something like 1.2 billion pounds from central government funds after April. The thing about TfL is, I mean, I don't understand how it is possible to run an organisation like that so badly as it has been run, because it makes huge losses, and yet London has the finest public transport system almost in the world. Buses, not trams, but actually a couple of trams, buses, trams, but also the tube as well. How you manage to run this at a loss defeats me, until, of course, you start losing 75% of your income, which is from fares. That's what happened during the pandemic. So, in other words, Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, is saying we need government help. The government will say, go whistle, as far as that's concerned. Then they will have to do something. It's crazy that whilst there's this talk of levelling up the rest of the country, business leaders in London are saying London's being levelled down because of the lack of transport. I mean, this is something that TfL really needs to get its head round and start to decide how to make money. The worst thing that happened, as far as London Transport is concerned, is when Ken Livingstone was the head of the GLC and he reduced fares, and that caused enormous overcrowding, and some people say led to quite a few tragedies on the tube, simply because it can't.
Okay, Michael. Unfortunately, we've got to leave it there, but thank you very much, Michael Wilson.
Lots more coming away in the next hour, including the latest political headlines. But first, here's your forecast.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
So the UK looking rather cloudy and showery in the east, but brighter in the west. Let's take a look at the details then. A few showers will feed into Cornwall in the brisk northerly wind, but elsewhere across southwest England it's dry with some sunshine. It will feel chilly though in the breeze. Meanwhile, a much cloudier day is expected across the southeast of England. And here it will be rather showery too with a gusty northerly wind. Pembrokeshire could catch an isolated shower, but for the rest of Wales it's looking dry and brighter, albeit quite chilly and breezy here too. The Midlands can expect an east to west split. Towards the east will be a fair amount of cloud, giving some showers, whereas further west most places should stay dry with some bright weather at times. In the northeast, showers could merge to give some more persistent rain with hill snow. Across this part of the country, the wind will begin to ease, so it won't feel quite as cold. Some showers will continue to feed into the east and southeast of Scotland, but for the rest of the country, there'll be lots of sunshine around. Northern Ireland's likely to see the sunniest weather of all, though, and the wind will be noticeably lighter than elsewhere across the UK. During the afternoon and evening, it will become largely dry with clear spells and a frost. And that is how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
It has just gone 7 o'clock. A very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us on the Great British Breakfast here on GB News with Paul Hawkins and with me, Isabel Webster. Coming up on the show.
More COVID travel restrictions are introduced by the government, meaning mandatory testing, while Nigeria is added to the red travel list. Is the government being too cautious, or has it got it right?
NHS England's revealed that 90% of COVID critical care beds are being occupied by unvaccinated patients. Does that change your mind about getting the jab or introducing tougher restrictions?
Will the Republic's return to lockdown light have a knock-on effect for Northern Ireland? We've got the latest.
And Manchester City returned to the top of the table after another thrilling day in the Premier League. As always, you don't need to go anywhere else for your Sunday sport.
Yeah, that's all to come right here on the Great British Breakfast.
Well, our top story this morning, and another day and more changes to COVID travel rules. This time, from 4 a.m. on Tuesday morning, anyone entering the UK will have to show proof of a negative PCR or lateral flow test taken before travel, as well as having to self-isolate when you get back until you receive a negative PCR test within 2 days of your arrival.
And anyone now arriving from Nigeria from tomorrow morning will have to spend 10 days in a quarantine hotel after the country was added to the red travel list.
Well, let's get more on this and some of today's other top stories with the help of Dr. Remi Adekoya, politics lecturer at the University of York. A very good morning to you. Do you think that the government has bowed to pressure in introducing these tests before travelling, or do you think that this is just the act of a responsible government?
I mean, some of the things I agree with. For instance, pre-departure tests, I think, are pretty much a no-brainer. We should have pre-departure tests. What I don't understand is why, for instance, people in countries on the red list, like in Nigeria right now, if you are not a British citizen or a citizen of Ireland or a resident in the UK, even if you've had your pre-departure test and everything is fine and you have your visa and, for instance, want to come spend Christmas with your family, you won't be able to travel here. Because according to the rules right now, only people who are UK residents or UK citizens or Irish citizens are able to come to the UK. So that part I don't really understand. The pre-departure test, yes, that's clear. But why there's now a restriction on people who are non-UK nationals, even if a pre-departure test shows they're fine, that part I don't really get.
Yeah. So you think the government's being cautious in one respect, but maybe over-egging it in another?
Yes, I do. I think some of the restrictions are too sweeping and so probably unnecessary.
Remi, where do you think we're going with this Omicron variant? There really is no solid, consistent data on this new variant, and so at the moment the jury's out.
Just like Michael said a couple of minutes ago, there's conflicting reports everywhere, and everyone has their own ideas about it. I saw some reports from South African doctors who treated some of the initial patients identified with this variant there, who said they displayed very mild symptoms. And so they say even though the virus is probably more transmissible, this variant is more transmissible, patients seem to be exhibiting mild symptoms, and so they don't think it is particularly worse than any previous variants we've seen. But there's some other stories circulating out there, and of course because it's new, people are still scared and wary. So, that part I understand.
And of course, because as I think overnight, we've learnt that it's not only thought to be more transmissible, but the incubation period is shorter. Of course, if there are cases of severe illness, just a small number could quickly escalate. Listen, it's an ever-growing, ever-changing situation. Lots of people have accused the government of mixed messaging on this. People have been told, go ahead with your Christmas plans, don't worry about it, but scientific advisors behind the scenes expressing concern about that. I was out and about in central London yesterday in Covent Garden. I've never seen it so packed. People certainly seem to me to be going about their normal lives. And it just is a question, I suppose, of whether or not we can likely see restrictions perhaps being brought in before Christmas.
I think the government definitely doesn't want to bring in restrictions. I think they'll do everything not to bring in the restrictions, and definitely Boris Johnson's sort of instincts and the people around him are not to bring in restrictions. They'll only do that, I think, if they really feel the situation is getting out of hand. And there's today is so we've got about 3 weeks to Christmas, let's say less than 3 weeks. So I think by next week, we'll probably know more. If they don't bring in any restrictions by the end of next week, then I don't think there's going to be any major restrictions before Christmas. Like I say, everybody wants the nation to be in a good mood. Everybody likes that Christmas buzz, of going to your city centre and, there's people all around doing their Christmas shopping, and it just makes life more pleasant. And I think, I don't think the government is going to want to spoil people's moods this Christmas if they don't have to.
Yeah, you mentioned Boris Johnson there. He's going to order a wide-ranging inquiry into the role of police, social services, schools and the probation watchdog in safeguarding children following the murder of 6-year-old Arthur Labino Hughes. Do you think that this inquiry is going to actually make a difference, seeing as previous inquiries, I'm thinking of children like Victoria Climbié and Baby P, do you think this inquiry is actually going to make a difference this time?
I hope it does. And, the question is, what kind of obstacles did social workers face during the lockdown, which were specific to the lockdown only? And what kind of obstacles did they face, which are more general obstacles they face even without a lockdown? And so I read a very interesting report from the University of Birmingham, which details some of the obstacles they faced during lockdown. So very often they met families at doorsteps or in their garden. They didn't go into their homes unless there was serious suspicion of serious child abuse going on. Sometimes, even though they were supposed to be able to meet families and children in schools, the families had the right to deny them that meet on the basis of fears of COVID. And a lot of social workers did express concern that some parents they thought were actually using COVID as an excuse not to meet them and for them not to find out if anything was going on in the household. So it's going to be important to identify those specific sort of challenges, and then what are the challenges aside lockdown scenarios? Okay, what are the challenges social workers face aside lockdown scenarios? And like we know, they face all sorts of financial challenges. It's because it costs money, it costs resources, and they're under-resourced. And sometimes, for instance, they might like to organize meetings outside the home setting where they can observe children and the way they interact with other children, and then the way they also respond to their parents for a longer period of time. But that takes some organization and that takes some resources. If they're only able to come into the home for 30 minutes or 45 minutes or an hour, that sometimes might not be enough. So I think we need to look at this generally aside, like I say, what may have been some of the restrictions during the lockdown to make sure things like this don't happen again.
I think, Remy, everything you've said is definitely that should be taken on board. But the social workers in this case, they did visit the home and they did have a look at those bruises. Sure. And so surely there has to be some responsibility taken for the personal judgment of whoever made that visit.
True. And I also heard pictures were sent. The family members sent pictures of the bruises to the police. Whoever received those pictures and didn't act on them, if that was the case, should definitely be held responsible for that. That's, there's no two ways about that.
Honestly, one of the most harrowing stories of recent memory for me. I can't think of anything worse than this awful story. Moving away from that, from a real-life tragedy to what the Labour Party can only really describe as this ongoing psychodrama, I suppose, in the shadow cabinet between the leader and the deputy leader. No love lost there, but now a sort of move being made by Sir Keir Starmer by getting rid of Angela Rayner's right-hand man, her head of communications. This rift is ever deepening. Where does it go now?
Well, we'll see. In political science, there's something we call the Iron Law of Oligarchy, which states that essentially every organization, no matter how democratically it starts, eventually morphs into oligarchic tendencies in which you have a small group of people at the top wanting to concentrate as much power as possible in their hands, irrespective of whether it's a right-wing party, a centrist party, or a left-wing party. And so clearly this is what is going on in the Labour Party right now, and Keir Starmer and his people want to sort of concentrate as much power in their hands and marginalize Angela Rayner. And I understand that from a sort of party, technical point of view. You do want the party leadership to be on the same page. You want the same kind of vision. You want the same kind of messaging. So even though Gordon Brown and Tony Blair had their differences and their rivalries, they were pretty much generally on the same page with regards to the direction the Labour Party needed to move in. When it comes to Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner, they're clearly not on the same page. With regards to tone, with regards to messaging, and with regards to the general direction the party needs to move in. So I do understand if I was in Keir Starmer's position, I'd also be trying to get rid of Angela Rayner. That's the way politics works. Whether he's going to be able to do it, that's a different case. I think most probably not, because of the fact that, she has this feisty personality. And when people are feisty, people read that as meaning you're passionate. And then you're passionate, that means you care. And when people believe you care about people and their problems, then they're ready to forgive you a way more than they'd forgive other people. And so Angela Rayner is one of those people. It's not going to be easy to get rid of her, definitely, because she has her fans.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you, Remy. Really appreciate your time this morning. Remy Adekoya there, a political lecturer from the University of York.
Time now to take a look at what else is making the headlines today. And new figures from NHS England show more than 90% of patients requiring specialist care to help them breathe have not had the COVID vaccine. Doctors and nurses are said to be concerned about the knock-on effect that this is now having on other treatments, especially for cancer and transplant patients, with the NHS waiting list growing to 5.8 million people by the end of September.
The Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, says he remains concerned for the thousands of people still without power, 8 days after Storm Arwen swept through Scotland and North East England. More wintry weather, is expected to affect the area over the next few days, with 4,700 homes still waiting to be connected to the national grid.
President Biden will hold an emergency video call with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin on Tuesday to try to ease the tension over Ukraine. The US Secretary of State Andrew Blinken claims to have seen evidence Russia's preparing a large-scale attack on Ukraine following the largest military build-up on the border since the Russians annexed Crimea in 2014.
Lewis Hamilton's hopes of winning a record 8th Formula One World Championship were helped by a crash for title rival Max Verstappen in qualifying for today's Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Hamilton will start in pole position with Verstappen in third, although the Red Bull driver could yet be given a further grid penalty if he needs to replace a damaged gearbox. Paul Coit will be talking about that and the action in the Premier League later on this hour.
And today's weather. Some sunshine, believe it or not, in the northwest, but cloud and showers elsewhere. Highs of 7 degrees today and flood warnings are in place for the early parts of next week.
You're watching The Great British Breakfast. Really good to have you with us this Sunday morning. As we've been telling you, the government has announced pre-COVID levels, pre-departure COVID tests, I should say, will be reintroduced for all arrivals into the UK from Tuesday amid fears about the spread of the Omicron variant.
However, there is some good news. The first at-home treatment for COVID-19 could reportedly be offered to patients before Christmas to help protect the most vulnerable from the variant. Well, joining us now is Professor Sanjeev Krishna. He's a professor of molecular parasitology and medicine. A very good morning to you. Let's start with the good news, shall we? Because that's just the kind of person that I am. Let's talk about this antiviral pill that I think it's the Telegraph this morning is reporting could be handed out and administered to people suffering the symptoms of COVID before Christmas, so within the next 3 weeks.
Yes. In this climate of Omicron and the uncertainty surrounding this new variant, of course, the possibility of having a treatment that could still work, and the chances are that Omicron will not affect how effective this treatment is. That is good news, and I agree with you. We do need as much good news as we can get at this time of year, don't we?
Indeed, indeed.
How do you feel about this Omicron variant, generally speaking? There's no consistent, solid, reliable data on it yet, and the jury's out.
Yeah, you put it well. I think that we are in an uncertain period. So everything that I or anyone else says, has to be taken with a degree of caution. For me, one of the important variables that I'm looking out for is really how much severe disease will be associated with Omicron. Some of the early data, some of the early figures from South Africa, where, by the way, they've done a super job in collecting information and transmitting it. And they really ought to be, supported and praised for the work that they've done. Some of the early work suggests, as you've already mentioned, that transmission may happen more quickly. In fact, it may occur even in those who've had previous variants of SARS-CoV-2. And, it could even affect children now a little bit more than some of the other variants. So we are looking for this information and monitoring it as much as we can. And rather than thinking too much about restricting travel, one ought to really be thinking now about how best to apply the tools that we have already developed in the last year and a half, 2 years. Diagnostics, masking, limiting gatherings, and just taking precautions that we are already very familiar with as part of the process of watching out for and seeing how Omicron evolves.
Limiting gatherings. Do you think then that Christmas parties should be cancelled?
I think what we ought to be thinking about is a very flexible approach, because until the information comes in, and I hope in the next week or two, we will be able to narrow the uncertainties. But until that information becomes available, well, why not take simple precautions that we all know do have a way of minimizing risks of getting this infection? And, one of the most important things to do is please get that booster, get those vaccines, because whatever happens to transmission, whatever happens to infection, what we do know is that the vaccines really do reduce the risk of severe disease. And you really don't want to develop severe COVID because it is a pretty nasty infection.
Yeah, and Professor Krishna, were you saying then a moment ago that you think that the travel restrictions perhaps are a bit OTT? It would be sufficient, in your view, just to continue with those mitigations that you described, assuming everyone's triple jabbed and using masks, etc. Would you like to see planes flying again?
Well, Omicron's escaped. It's in 38 countries already. We have to be clear about what it is we're trying to achieve. And I think what in the balance of tools and approaches that we have, I think that really having rigorous testing, and I agree with pre-flight testing, having good quality tests and monitoring them and implementing these measures rigorously, I think on balance that will have a bigger impact now in limiting local transmissions as well as what's coming in, because we have local transmission already.
Sanjeev, really good to talk to you this morning. Thank you so much for your time, Sanjeev Krishna, Professor of Molecular Parasitology at St George's University.
Don't go anywhere. We've got lots more for you coming up on The Great British Breakfast, including all of your Sunday newspapers with the broadcaster and journalist Andrew Ebourne. If that's not a lovely wake-up on a Sunday morning, I don't know what is. Full of beans, that man. But first of all, here's your forecast.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
So the UK looking rather cloudy and showery in the east, but brighter in the west. Let's take a look at the details a bit more then. A few showers will feed into Cornwall in the brisk northerly wind, but elsewhere across southwest England it's dry with some sunshine. It will feel chilly though in the breeze. Meanwhile, a much cloudier day is expected across the southeast of England, and here it will be rather showery too with a gusty northerly wind. Pembrokeshire could catch an isolated shower, but for the rest of Wales, it's looking dry and bright, albeit quite chilly and breezy here too. At the Midlands, can expect an east to west split. Towards the east, there'll be a fair amount of cloud giving some showers, whereas further west, most places should stay dry with some bright weather at times. Moving over to the northeast, showers could merge to give some more persistent rain with hill snow. Across this part of the country, the wind will begin to ease, so it won't feel quite as cold. Some showers will continue to feed into the east and southeast of Scotland, but for the rest of the country, there'll be lots of sunshine around. Finally, Northern Ireland, likely to see the sunniest weather of all though, and the wind will be noticeably lighter than elsewhere across the UK. During the afternoon and evening, it will become largely dry with clear spells and a frost. And that is how your weather is shaping up this Sunday morning.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back. It's just after 7:20. Settle in. Let us take you through the Sunday morning front pages of the newspapers. We'll kick things off with The Independent, featuring an exclusive about senior Tories demanding a radical overhaul of the asylum system to try and cut the numbers of people attempting that dangerous channel crossing.
Yeah, the Times, the Sunday Times, leading on pressure felt by doctors and nurses as a result of COVID-19. The paper reporting new figures from NHS England showing more than 90% of virus sufferers requiring specialist care are unvaccinated.
Here's the Sunday Mirror. They're speaking to grieving families that lost loved ones during the pandemic. They express anger following claims Christmas parties were held at number 10 Downing Street during lockdown.
While the Observer looks at how public trust in politicians has fallen dramatically since Boris Johnson became Prime Minister, according to a poll from YouGov, 63% of voters believe politicians were merely out for themselves in the wake of the Owen Paterson affair.
Here is the Sunday Telegraph. Their political editor is claiming that the first at-home COVID treatment will be offered to patients by Christmas. The rollout of the antiviral pill will protect the most vulnerable from the Omicron variant. And as you can see, it's also showing a picture of Prince William, who says he starts his week by listening to rock music, including AC/DC. See, I thought Prince William could put a foot wrong, but I'm not sure about that.
No, I think he's put a foot right there. Good lad. The Sunday Express reporting on Prince William's childhood memories of his mother, Diana, Princess of Wales. He recalls how they would sing along to Tina Turner's Simply the Best to calm his anxiety before starting boarding school.
You see, his mum had good taste in music, at least. Here is the Mail on Sunday. They're describing the prince's torment after witnessing the aftermath of a devastating accident involving a young boy. Their headline, as you can see, William's mental health crisis left him feeling as if the whole world was dying. Very brave of him to speak up about that.
Indeed, the Sunday People calls for a change in the law following the death of 6-year-old Arthur Labino Hughes. Paula Hudgell, adopted mother of double amputee Tony Hudgell, who suffered horrific abuse at the hands of his biological parents, calls for a child abuse register.
You can't argue with that. What's wrong with some people? And on a lighter note, the front page of the Daily Star runs with a celebrity exclusive about how footballing legend David Ginola communicated with a ghost during a séance. Nobody cares. Let's move on.
You say that. You say that. I want to hear the details.
I don't. It's nonsense. Absolute nonsense. Let's talk to somebody who doesn't talk any nonsense. The journalist and broadcaster Andrew Ebourne joins us back in the studio, full of beans as always.
Full of beans, and I tell you what, that story, he was obviously full of spirits, and it wasn't the other ones, was it? It's got to be good. I thank you. What I love, and just picking up on William, and you rightly said, Isabel, it is fantastic that people in the public eye talk about their mental health. And I always say that if you broke your leg in the old days, people would sign the cast and you'd tell people about it, you make a joke about it. Nobody used to speak about mental health. And what I love is that we should be the generation that talks about mental health so that the next generation doesn't suffer the stigma. So all praise to William on that. What I also love, I mean, he talks about how music helps him. So Simply the Best, fantastic songs. And Diana had superb taste. A good friend of mine, Krista Berg, was one of Diana's favourite musicians, Lady in Red and so on and so forth. But what it does show is the power of music to heal. And he talks about listening to AC/DC. William will tell you that his children actually prefer Shakira. He would talk about that as well. What I do love is that this week is when we're tying in with the fantastic race to the Christmas #1. This is what it's all about. And as always with the Christmas #1, you have this year's lineup. They range from the big hitters. You can have a look at that.
Yes.
There we go. So this is, can you see that? This is Ed Sheeran. and Elton John have got... Oh, that one over there. How's
Is that the snowman? Have they redone the snowman?
They've redone, but even better than that, they've got the snowman. They've also done, the fantastic thing is that they're tribute to Mariah Carey, so there's a rather alarming video. Only just released, hot off the press. I woke up this morning, and that certainly woke me up. We have Elton John. They've captured some glorious moments of Christmas past with all the best Christmas singles that ever there was. It is a brilliant, brilliant
Sorry, run
video.
that past me again. Is that Ed Sheeran dressed as Mariah Carey?
That is Ed Sheeran dressed as Mariah Carey.
God, what's wrong with us
come
all?
on. No, but it's with Elton John. It's the first time they've done it.
Sorry, so is this a montage of all the best Christmas songs, or this is one Christmas
there's this
song?
one song which they've done called Merry Christmas.
Right.
But they've done a little montage, an homage.
An homage.
An homage of a montage to Christmas's past.
So this is a new song.
It is a new
Christmas
song. The race to Christmas #1. What I also love is a year of first. So ABBA, back on the scene. ABBA, 40 years. They've got a song out called Little Things. Adele has got a brilliant song out as well. For the first time ever, the Church of England has released a song called In the Bleak Midwinter. Remember that one at school?
Yeah, I love that one.
Children in Need, the first time ever they've done a Christmas song. So we love all that. But also there are people like Mark Hall, a.k.a. Lad Baby. You remember, he does all his little puns on sausage rolls. But the last 3 years, he's had the Christmas #1 slot. So we built... come on, we're good on this.
We hadn't even heard of Lad Baby, let alone the fact you had been #1 for the last 3 years.
Oh, where have you been?
Is that true? I
It is
always
true.
feel like I need
Lad
to check.
Baby. But it's all about sausage rolls and the wonderful joke. You might remember that Greg's one did a nativity scene with the sausage roll as the baby. Remember that? So Lad Baby, he had this... We built this city, not on rock and roll. We built this city on sausage rolls.
Very
good. Thank you. I love, not rock and roll, but I love...
Sausage rolls.
Thank you. And Don't Stop Me...
Sausage roll.
Well, close, but Don't Stop Me Eating as opposed to Don't Stop Believing. I love
Sorry.
it. It's got to be good.
Sorry.
You could do your sausage roll things in there. What I also love about Christmas as well, there's lots of the unsung heroes. So Michael Armstrong, who for the last... He's an overnight sensation.
Is he the veteran?
Well, he could be a veteran. No, well, he could be a veteran, but he's 36 years it's taken him to be an overnight sensation. What I love about him is he got the #1 spot as an independent for 4 weeks in the US.
Okay.
Sensation.
And you've forgotten also Limahl from Kajagoogoo.
Kajagoogoo. I loved it. He's a mate. So remember Too Shy, Hush, Hush, I Cry.
Indeed.
He's brilliant. And he's got the same Christmas tree from his home. I love it. I had him on my show previously. He's a lovely guy.
He is lovely.
Pocket Gods, I should tell you about the Pocket Gods as well, because they've come out. What they've done is a white noise Christmas. Now, what the art of this is, they're making a point about the industry. And I spoke about this on a previous Great British Breakfast. In Spotify, they pay you next to nothing. So Gary Newman, he said, I had 1 million streams and I got 37 quid. And the reason for that is you have to have 30 seconds played of your music in order to qualify. And you get a 0.3 pence. You know, everything's a magic number. What they've done is just an album of 30-second tracks.
Right.
So they've got a white noise thing. It's very clever, just to raise
And who are they,
awareness
the
of that.
Pocket Gods?
They're called the Pocket Gods, and they're doing a white noise Christmas.
Right.
So that's good. And there's also, I should say, there's an MP. They're all getting in on the act. MP, wonderful. Where is she? She was sort of saying, Carolyn Harris, excuse me. Carolyn Harris, everyone deserves a Christmas. She's raising money and awareness about homelessness and about feeding people, about food banks and so on and so forth. So she's doing a brilliant cover version of that.
Message there.
So,
although, let's be honest,
so,
round the three of us, how many of you have actually bought a Christmas single any time in the last 10 years?
I bought them all this morning.
I haven't even bought
You've got to support the music industry. Because this is what happens. Nowadays, 80%, that's what the BPI is saying, the British phonographic industry, 80% of music is online. And artists are getting nothing.
I know.
Nothing.
I mean, my heart
we
doesn't
need
bleed
to
too much
encourage
for
the
them,
industry. So buy them. Go out and buy all of those.
OK, have we got time? I'm just asking quickly, have we got time for this next story? Hopefully we can squeeze in something about Sex and the City.
Let me tell you about Sex and the City. It is back. So grab your Manolas. Carrie and the gang are finally returning. Can you believe it? Hurrah.
I'm excited.
I can tell there's not a dry seat in the house. What I love about it is they are recreating it. It's all about empowerment, if you like. It's about, as the name suggests, Sex and the City. We're not, however, going to see everybody.
Samantha's not coming.
Yeah, Catrol's not there.
She was like the essence of the Sex in the City, wasn't
But you'll
she?
find in the new version, which is out this week, in the new version, it's about diversity. So you're going to get lots of new voices. What I also love, and it's a lovely tie-in with Airbnb, who've been brilliant about this, they gave away the apartment, Carrie's flat in New York for tuppence halfpenny as a promotional campaign. They've done the same this year with the Home Alone house.
Oh, that is
isn't that good?
absolutely stunning house.
It's all about promotion. So this week, you can bid for the Home Alone house. You could be in there in time for Christmas. You get all the traps and so on and so forth. The same, we've got 4 guests for only $25. It's all to do with promoting, surprise, the latest film franchise. And you can have booby traps and you can have Kraft macaroni and cheese toast. It's all there.
I saw a funny meme this week about saying, you know you're old when you watch Home Alone, my childhood favourite film, and you actually think, what do his parents do for a living, given the size of his house? And I thought the same when I was watching it. I was like, how would I think a house like that?
You're right.
Andrew Ebourne, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much
Love to see
for
you
a
both.
rip-roaring ride.
Thank you very much
this morning.
Yes.
OK.
Right, it is 7:31. You are watching the Great British Breakfast. The government still not responding to France after they formally rejected Boris Johnson's call for joint patrols on the beaches around Calais to deter migrants from crossing the Channel.
The UK government has promised to work in close cooperation and partnership with France to deal with the migrant issue, but as of today, no common solution has been found. France's Prime Minister, Jean Castex, has previously stated the UK should overhaul its asylum system, as according to him, it's not offering enough legal immigration paths to UK asylum.
Well, Orest Fopiani is head of the International Relations Department at Webster University, Geneva, and he joins us now. A very good morning to you. What do you make of this ongoing impasse between the UK and France when it comes to trying to solve this crisis?
Well, this is a long-standing issue that has now in front of us a clear example of misunderstanding. We're still talking of a clash between the two governments, but actually the problem has to be solved on a European level. According to me, this is just the tip of the iceberg, but we have to go through a different problem analysis. We have to bear in mind that most of the media spread inaccurate data on migrants, and in most discussions on migration, the starting point is usually numbers. But just know that right now, only 3.6% of the global populations are migrants. So I don't feel that this is just a Franco-British problem.
No, perhaps not, but obviously it's very much forefront in our minds at the moment, given the tragedy that happened in the Channel just last week. 27 people died during a, 17, 18-hour crossing that they'd attempted. We're seeing people day after day in their thousands, more than ever, arriving illegally on UK shores. And as you say, this impasse between the two nations on how to resolve it. An olive branch has been issued by the French in the last couple of days, who are expecting to take over the EU presidency soon. What hope are they offering to the UK in terms of trying to allow migrants to be returned back to the continent, something that's not happening at the moment?
Can you repeat your questions?
The French are soon to take over the European presidency and have offered an olive branch to the UK, saying that they will consider finding ways to return migrants back to the European continent.
Well, this is something they have to deal with between the two countries, and France has to take a decision. But once again, this is not sufficient. We need other solutions. I go back to what I told you before. It could be the tip of the iceberg. It would not be only one case, but many cases in the future.
Yeah, but what are those solutions then? I accept that you say it's not just about the UK and France then, but I mean, how do we stop the problem of migration, of people arriving right across Europe from various different inroads? I mean, do you stop it? I mean, what are your answers to this?
You need an enhancement of the Frontex system, a better coordination of all European coast guards, and a better coordination between Europol and Interpol. Once again, you have to understand that this is not a Franco-British problem. It's an example. But if there is no coordination in Brussels and if there is no decision taken to protect those migrants crossing the different borders, there will be no solution.
Yeah, senior Conservative MPs this morning demanding a radical overhaul of the asylum system to allow migrants to claim refuge at UK embassies anywhere in the world rather than having to travel to the UK to try and stop these channel crossings. That's what's being reported this morning. What would you make of that?
Well, this is another problem. But once again, I do believe that even if they stop the visa system or the asylum seeking system, it's not sufficient. We need different solutions. It's also the perception that has to be changed. The vetting and screening system can be improved, but undocumented migrants have to be controlled from the starting point, and not only when they are crossing borders or channels or seas.
OK, Orest Fopiani, Head of International Relations at the Webster University in Geneva. Really good to get your thoughts on this highly, well, complex issue. Thanks very much indeed.
Yeah, and do let us know what you think at home. GBviews at gbnews.uk. Coming up, we'll have the latest sport headlines with Paul Coit, who is going to have more reaction to that incredible victory by West Ham. 3-2 they beat Chelsea yesterday. It's a tight race at the top of the Premier League at the moment. So Paul will have more reaction to that, I believe.
I will have more reaction. It was a day of late goals in the Premier League. West Ham really upsetting Thomas Tuchel and Chelsea with their win. We'll have more on all those results with Aidan McGee coming up in just a second.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Well, good morning. West Ham dealt Chelsea a serious dent to their title hopes. 5-goal thriller at the London Stadium yesterday. Late goal from Arthur Masuaku gave West Ham the victory, even though he did admit he didn't even mean to score. But it was some goal if he did mean to, but he said he didn't. The loss leaves Chelsea in third, but still only 2 points behind the new league leaders, Manchester City. But despite the positive result, West Ham boss David Moyes refused to get overexcited.
Well, I think that gives us a chance of, I wouldn't say being successful, but certainly not being a poor team. I think if you've got the the determination, the character to keep it going. And it was tough at times. I was really disappointed to lose the second goal just before half-time, because we'd got back in the game and we were in the middle of, we lose a player just right on half-time, and it looked as if we were going to lose Kirk as well at that time as well. So we really just had a bad sort of 3 or 4 minutes where we couldn't really get things together. But I thought the resilience of the players, we tried to fix it a little bit at half-time and make it better. And thankfully we got there.
It's not bad, though, is it? Only about 3 or 4 minutes against Chelsea. Went very well in the end. Manchester City, they claimed the top spot, though, in the Premier League last night with a convincing win over Claudio Ranieri's Watford. Bernardo Silva scored twice, putting a man-of-the-match display. Probably the best player in the country at the moment to help the English reigning champions take all 3 points back to Manchester. Pep Guardiola said afterwards that the game, well, had his side reached their highest standard as they reclaimed the top spot for the first time since they won the league in May. Claudio Ranieri was, shall we say, shockingly very pleased after the game, despite the loss.
Yes, I'm satisfied. But of course, I'm satisfied because I'm thinking we played 3 matches against big teams, Manchester United, Chelsea, and Manchester City, and we got 3 points. Somebody told me at the beginning to start these 3 big matches. Claudio, at the end of the Manchester City, you will have 3 points. Are you happy? I'm happy.
OK, they lost. He's happy. Fair enough. Elsewhere, the newly boosted Newcastle finally got their first win of the season against Burnley, thanks to a lone Callum Wilson goal. Burnley manager Sean Dyche discussed how, despite the loss, experience of the relegation battle will suit his side better in the long run.
The league table, it's not about them, it's about us. That continues to be the challenge. That's clear-minded focus from us as a group and my players. It's our challenge. It's nothing to do with anyone else. They can all look after themselves. It's our job to look after ourselves. We've been down this road before, unfortunately. We've had to work and we've had to keep the right mentality. You could see today there's definitely the right mentality. I mean, there's no lack in that, and you can see at Wolves there was as well. It's just adding them quality moments and finding them key moments. But we've done it before, so it's important we remember that and reference it and use it wisely going forwards.
Stoical, not quite Claudio Ranieri. In the other games, seemed to be late goals galore. There really was. Neil Maupay scored in the 98th minute to salvage a point for Brighton in the South Coast derby against Southampton as they drew 1-1. Divock Origi scored a last-minute winner to sink Wolverhampton Wanderers. Wolves fans there with their head in their hands at Molineux as Liverpool won that game 1-0. And today's games see 3 games kick off at 2 o'clock. Leeds square off with former Championship rivals Brentford. Ralph Rangnick will take his first game in charge of Manchester United for their clash. That's with Crystal Palace, and Tottenham Hotspur will place bottom place Norwich. The late game is at 4:30, and that's Steven Gerrard face his former manager Brendan Rodgers as Aston Villa face Leicester, while Everton and Arsenal fans have to wait until Monday night to see their teams meet. OK, let's have a look at the biggest sports stories they're making the papers this morning. Sports writer and broadcaster Aidan McGee is with us in the studio to go through those. Morning, Aidan. I think you've got your own chair now. I think you seem to be here more than you were here last night.
Late finish last night. I can still smell my aftershave from when I walked through, actually.
In fact, everybody could smell your aftershave, actually, from a couple of weeks ago. But anyway, tell us what's taking your fancy in the papers today.
Yeah, back page of the Mail on Sunday today. I mean, there's only one show in town today, isn't there? And that's Ralph Rangnick, the Manchester United manager, takes over today against Crystal Palace. Now, you're always managing a situation at Man United, aren't you, as manager? You're always managing a PR situation. You're always trying to put out fires before they even emerge. Now, back page of the Mail on Sunday, Joe Bernstein, it won't be a quick fix. So he's buying himself a little bit of time there. It's quite canny. You can tell this guy's
this is before the first game.
I know.
Already the excuses are coming.
Yeah,
little
exactly.
time.
He said,
wait till it happens.
But he's been tuned in. I think he had an idea a while ago he might be in contention for this job. But he said, I have to be realistic. 5 years ago, our team lost 5-0 against Liverpool, and it could have been a lot more if we were honest. And he admitted that, obviously, ahead of today's game against Crystal Palace. Yeah. And he said he's not going to turn this side into pressing monsters within 3 or 4 weeks. He said that we're unlikely to make that much progress even in the next 6 months. So he's not just looking 3 or 4 weeks ahead. He's basically saying, look, we're not going to do anything all the time I'm here. I think he's probably banking on the fact that at the end of that time, he'll have made sufficient progress to be able to say to the board, look, I think we should stay on a bit longer here. Just as he did at Leipzig, he did an interim period and then said, you know what, the best man for the job to take you forward, here I am, it's me. So,
do you think this is what's on his mind? Because he did mention this in the first press conference,
Yeah.
and he's saying, well, you know, the whole idea is that I'm here for 6 months and then I'll move upstairs, but should things go well, but of course, you know, once bitten, twice shy when it comes to interim managers, but I think this is a different kettle of fish to Ollie.
No, it is. I mean, page 66 and 67 of the Sun, Phil Thomas has done a piece called Manchester United, and this this talks about Rangnick wanting to meet with Sir Alex Ferguson to discuss the future. Alex Ferguson isn't somebody who thought 6 months ahead. He was somebody who thought about longevity. There's absolutely no reason. It's going to be very difficult apart from anything else, Paul. They haven't got anybody else in mind at the moment. This guy goes and tears it up. They've also almost got the same problem as they had in a way with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Nobody expected Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to win 15 out of his first 19 games. Nobody expected them to come from behind against PSG in the Champions League, turn things around, create that magical night in Paris with Eric Cantona there in the background and Sir Alex Ferguson, as we remember.
Actually, United fans are going dewy-eyed just listening to you talk about this.
Yeah, I know they are. I mean, it's 2.5 years ago.
Even
May as well be 1,000 years ago, mightn't it? But, but if he does well, I cannot see how he wouldn't be even in contention. He even mentioned it the other day. It's obviously been discussed as it is. But the problem as well, PR-wise, is that he's got Cristiano and Ronaldo in the dressing room. We touched on this yesterday morning, actually. His side isn't a pressing. Well, he wants his side to be a pressing side. It's difficult to do that when you've got 36-year-old Cristiano Ronaldo
but you
up front.
can't leave Cristiano
He's scoring
Ronaldo
goals
out, can you?
He's scoring goals. It's the point that Roy Keane made last week after their game when against Chelsea, the 1-1 draw. One of Michael Carrick's last games in charge. It's a good point because he's scoring goals apart from anything else. But Rangnick did make the point at the end of last week in his pre-match press conference. Obviously, that's 48 hours ago now. I doubt much has changed since then. But he said, it's up to the manager to adapt to the players he has. I can't expect the players just to adapt to what I want within a few days. So it's a degree of pragmatism. This is perhaps why they've got a guy with a bit of experience in this time who can maybe do the job. You think back to Chelsea in 2009, they needed a quick fix. Interim boss, Gus Hiddink, got them to FA Cup final, beat Everton.
Right, let's talk about someone else that knows Manchester United, well, I say fairly well. Not that he was there a huge amount of time, and this is Jose Mourinho. Now, Jose still gets linked with jobs, and let's be honest, the last, 3 probably haven't gone the way that he would have wanted them?
No, I just think everyone has a sell-by date. He's had a fantastic run. There was Porto, there was 2 spells at Chelsea, Inter Milan, a fabulous achievement over there, winning the Champions League. They're the treble in that season. But no, as you say, I think bad decisions the last couple of times. Well, not bad decisions. You'd always take. You can't turn down Man United and clubs like Spurs. Roma hasn't gone particularly well. Bad defeat against Tromsø, I think it was earlier in the Europa League, in the Conference League. But yeah, back page. Tom Hopkinson of the Sunday Mirror, regular visitor into this this parish. He says Jose Mourinho has emerged as a potential target for Everton if they decide to pull the plug on Rafa Benitez's reign. At the moment, it's a big if. Yes, they got hammered at home to Liverpool, Benitez's old club, on Thursday, 4-1, but you've got to look at it back further than that. I think it's 1 win, 2 draws, 7 defeats in 10 matches.
So hold on, is he an upgrade on what they already have?
I don't think he is, and it's neither of their faults. I mean, they can't, because of the financial fair play restrictions, and they are seeking a bit of dispensation about this with the Premier League, I understand, but there's a problem with their spending. Now, they only signed Demarai Gray in the summer, who was only just a small amount of money by Premier League standards, but even so, they spent big money in the last 3 years under Mashiri.
We're talking like 500 million.
Yeah, and they've also gone through some pretty big-name managers in that time as well. You think of Sam Allardyce, you think of Ronald Koeman, Marco Silva, guys like that. You've got to get behind them at some point. There's also a feeling there, I'd imagine, that the squad is capable of a lot more than it's doing right now. I mean, you can go through probably about half a dozen Premier League sides at the moment. Man United were one of them. Well, they are still one of them. You'd think they can give a bit more than they have. There's a bit more quality in the squad that he's able to get out of there at the moment. But they have got injury problems as well. I think Dominic Calvert-Lewin coming back at some point, he'll make a big difference to them, as will Yerry Mina at the back.
We'll watch that very closely. Absolutely. Aidan, good to see you. Thank you very much, Aidan. We're back with more sport coming up in the next hour, and also the Ashes begin on Wednesday, so we'll talk about that coming up very shortly.
Very excited about the Ashes.
They are. I was just going to say, I can still smell that aftershave from Aidan emanating all the way across the studio.
Poor old Aidan. I like it, Aidan.
He's working hard, that's all it is. Look, thanks for joining us here on the Great British Breakfast. Time now to take a look at what else is making the headlines this morning.
Yeah, airlines and travel companies criticising the government after that sudden change to the COVID travel restrictions last night. Everyone now arriving in the UK will have to get a test before they travel, while still having to self-isolate until they get a negative test within 2 days of returning to the country. The new measures will come into force on Tuesday morning. The government will also add Nigeria to the red list of countries which require hotel quarantine from tomorrow.
The Prime Minister has ordered a wide-ranging investigation into the murder of Arthur Labino Hughes in the hope of preventing a similar tragedy in the future. The inquiry will look at the role of the police, schools, social services and probation watchdogs in the case of the 6-year-old's death. Arthur's stepmother, Emma Tustin, was jailed this week for 29 years for the murder and for child cruelty, whilst his father, Thomas Hughes, received 21 years for manslaughter.
New figures from NHS England show more than 90% of patients requiring specialist care to help them breathe have not had the COVID vaccine. Doctors and nurses are concerned about the knock-on effect this is having on other treatments, especially for cancer and transplant patients, with the NHS waiting list growing to 5.8 million people by the end of September.
There remain concerns for the thousands of people still without power 8 days after Storm Arwen swept through Scotland and North East England. More wintry weather is also expected to affect the area over the next few days, with 4,700 homes still waiting to be reconnected to the national grid.
And today's weather, it's looking quite settled for now. The northwest will enjoy some sunshine, but it will be cloudy with showers elsewhere, highs of 7 degrees. But there are weather warnings in place, with flooding expected during the early part of the week.
OK, time now to find out what you make of some of today's top stories. We've been asking you to get in touch with your GB views. Lots of people emailing and questioning, I have to say, the 90% figure of people unvaccinated in hospital. We were in intensive care, and I'd just like to reiterate that that figure has come to us from NHS England.
Yeah, that's not our figures. Those are figures from NHS England. And a lot of you also getting in touch with us this morning. We were talking about the migrant crisis in the Channel at the moment. France and the UK kind of really, they still haven't had that meeting at the moment after the French cancelled that meeting with Priti Patel after Boris Johnson leaked a letter that he sent to Emmanuel Macron. First of all, the UK says, Jacqueline, very good morning to you, Jacqueline, says the UK should stop all benefits. That includes getting a pizza on arrival. Once they reach our shores, straight to a detention processing centre, and that is where they should stay while waiting for asylum. The only benefit is basic food and shelter and no legal aid. If their asylum fails, they will soon stop crossing over.
Michael Brennan has got in touch saying, what a load of Eurospeak babble from the guest you had in Geneva. Therein lies the problem. Nobody in the EU will make a decision. All they do is obfuscate.
Yeah, some of you also thank you, I should say, to Fane Int, who got in touch with us, because we were talking about Prince William, who makes a lot of the front pages this morning, saying that he starts his week with AC/DC, and I was saying I really like the song. I think I said Back to Black. And then you remarked that Amy Winehouse also has a similar song. It's not actually. There's one slight difference. So thank you to Fane Int, who says it's Back in Black for AC/DC, correct, and it's Back to Black for Amy Winehouse.
Is that not what you said?
No, I said Back to Black for AC/DC, not Back in Black.
I see. Well, you stand corrected. Thank you. That's what we want these emails for. COVID treatment, let's be open about this. There are plenty of oral treatments available which have proved highly successful around the world in treating the corona infection. Just because our government and its advisors have blocked their use within the general public doesn't mean they don't exist, says Richard McAdam.
Yeah, on the migrant crisis, let's see here. This comes from W. Stockwell, seeing we are no longer part of the EU and they still have the open border policy. Any and all illegal migrants should be sent back after processing with a bill for the cost per illegal migrant for accommodation, benefits, processing, etc. This should be billed direct to the EU or France on a monthly basis. If processing them is more expensive, then they get a bigger bill. After a few bills, I assume by that he means the EU and France, may decide to do something about it.
Paul Andrew Borley has got in touch saying, stop calling people selfish for not being vaccinated. That's in spite of NHS England saying that critical care beds have been taken up 90% by those patients. He says, you're the selfish one for trying to force a medical procedure onto people. I don't think there's been any suggestion of a vaccine mandate from us or indeed anybody in the country as yet.
No, exactly,
News
yeah.
coming. We love to hear from you.
Yeah, do keep them coming in on anything you hear this morning on the programme. gbviews@gbnews.uk or at GBNews.
Yeah, lots more coming your way at 8 o'clock, including the return of travel restrictions announced by the government overnight. You're going to have to take a pre-departure test as well as wait at home for that 2-day negative PCR. And Nigeria has been added to the travel red list, the 10th African nation to do so. We'll have all of that and the rest of the day's news. First, though, is the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Well, the UK is looking rather cloudy and showery in the east, but brighter in the west. Let's take a look at the details. A few showers will feed into Cornwall in the brisk northerly wind, but elsewhere across southwest England, it's dry with some sunshine. It will feel chilly, though, in the breeze. Meanwhile, a much cloudier day is expected across the southeast of England, and here it will be rather showery too, with a gusty northerly wind. Pembrokeshire could catch an isolated shower, but for the rest of Wales, it's looking dry and bright, albeit quite chilly and breezy here too. Moving over to the Midlands, we can expect an east to west split. Towards the east, there'll be a fair amount of cloud giving some showers, whereas further west, most places should stay dry with some bright weather at times. In the northeast, showers could merge to give some more persistent rain with hill snow. Across this part of the country, the wind will begin to ease, so it won't feel quite as cold. Some showers will continue to feed into the east and southeast of Scotland. But for the rest of the country, there'll be lots of sunshine around. Looking at Northern Ireland, it's likely to see the sunniest weather of all, though, and the wind, I should say, will be noticeably lighter than elsewhere across the UK. During the afternoon and evening, it will become largely dry with clear spells and a frost. And that is how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
It's exactly 8 o'clock. A very good morning to you. You're watching The Great British Breakfast here on GB News with Paul Hawkins and Isabel Webster. Coming up on the show this morning.
More COVID travel restrictions are introduced by the government, meaning mandatory testing, while Nigeria is added to the red list. So we're asking, is the government being too cautious, or has it got it right?
Also this morning, NHS England's revealed 90% of COVID critical care beds are being occupied by unvaccinated patients. Does that change your mind about getting the jab or introducing tougher restrictions?
Will the Republic's return to lockdown light have a knock-on effect for Northern Ireland? We've got the latest on that.
And Manchester City return to the top of the table after another thrilling day in the Premier League. As always, you don't need to go anywhere else for your Sunday sport.
That's all to come right here on The Great British Breakfast.
Very good morning to you. We start with more changes to COVID travel rules. This time from 4 a.m. on Tuesday morning, anyone entering the UK will have to show proof of a negative PCR or lateral flow test taken before travel, as well as having to self-isolate when you get back until you receive a negative PCR test within 2 days of your arrival.
And also now, anyone arriving from Nigeria from tomorrow morning will have to spend 10 days in a quarantine hotel if they can find one. They are in short supply after the African country was the 10th nation to be added to the travel red list.
Yeah, let's get more on this and some of today's other top political stories with the help of political commentator Dominique Samuels. Dominique, a very good morning to you. What do you make of these travel restrictions coming back into play?
Well, for the travel industry in particular, this is seen as a huge blow. Travel businesses don't approve. British Airways chairman Sean Dollar said the move is completely out of step with the rest of the world and customers will now be faced with chaos. And the government actually acknowledged that this would be a huge blow to the travel industry this month and said that it would have a detrimental effect, yet has sort of pivoted on that decision and decided to introduce testing. This comes as the Omicron number of cases in this country totals 129 in England. So cases are growing and the government has said that it would be prepared to make some last minute decisions. But for a lot of people, this will mean more chaos for travellers.
Labour had been calling for these changes to be brought in, and as you say, the government have pivoted to them. Do you think then they've bowed to pressure and, as British Airways have said, have taken this decision, which is out of step with many other nations?
I think they have bowed to pressure, and I think there's this pressure on the government to appear as though they're doing something. But for a lot of people, this doesn't really make sense because we know that Omicron is already here, it's spreading across the world, and the scientific data on this right now is that cases are generally mild. So it can seem like a bit of an overreaction, especially when the travel industry has suffered so much throughout the past 2 years.
Are you worried about Omicron?
Me personally, not really. Based upon the information that we have at the moment, symptoms are very, very mild or symptomless. According to the World Health Organization, nobody has actually died as a result of this new variant. I think it may, in the long run, be a good thing because it means that this variant is endemic instead of the previous ones, Alpha and Delta, which are obviously far more dangerous in terms of hospitalisation. So it might be a bit of a blessing in disguise. So I think we should try and be a bit more cautious.
Dominique, it's interesting that the travel sector haven't really objected to the expansion of the red list as much as they have to the testing regime. Nigeria, as we've been saying, added to that list. Sajid Javid yesterday saying that Nigeria now second only to South Africa in terms of linked cases to Omicron. 21 cases here in the UK have now been linked to people travelling in from Nigeria. Of course, those quarantine rules will be in place for those travellers, but we're hearing reports that it's incredibly hard for passengers to get places in these hotels, that they're so oversubscribed. In fact, my brother's coming back from Botswana next week. He couldn't get one in London. He's having to be bussed from Heathrow up to Birmingham to do his hotel quarantine upon return.
It's going to be absolute chaos, and we've heard that with regards to hotel quarantine, the issues with it, specifically issues with food and how customers are treated, despite the fact they are paying thousands of pounds. So it will be extra chaos, and I think there will be far more complaints from people that are being forced to quarantine because a lot of people won't see the point. But, the travel industry has always said that, the red list has always been there and it makes complete sense. Obviously, we want to control the virus coming into the country, but we have to be balanced with regards to how we do this and also giving the travel industry enough time to prepare, and they quite frankly haven't been given that.
Yeah, Dominique, let's talk about Arthur Labino Hughes, the appalling case of that 6-year-old boy This week, Boris Johnson will order a wide-ranging inquiry into the role of police, social services, schools and the probation watchdog in safeguarding children following the case of Arthur. Do you think that these inquiries, we've had a number of them now, they've followed on from Victoria Climbié and then we had baby P, there are other children as well. What makes you think that perhaps this one is going to be different?
Well, the case of Arthur has really shocked the whole country. It shocked me in particular. I think people that can inflict that sort of torture and pain onto a child are evil, to be quite frank. And we know from the baby P case in 2007, there were specific accusations levelled at social services and in this case West Midlands Police, because concerns were raised by teachers and family members 3 times and West Midlands Police did not act upon them. Social services, after a visit shortly before his death, said that there were no safeguarding concerns, and particularly with regards to lockdown, I think that is a specific concern that people have had because despite the fact Arthur's school opened on June the 8th after lockdown and restrictions were eased, he did not actually return to school. And many people have said if we didn't have lockdown, concerns about his well-being would have been able to be addressed, particularly because Arthur's uncle actually was threatened with arrest by the police for breaking lockdown rules if he dared to go visit his nephew. And the government has actually said that it may look at extra safeguarding measures for at-risk children if there were future lockdowns, which I think is pretty concerning because there's an issue with social services, of course, they failed completely, but we also need to look at the impact that lockdown has actually had on children, because I think there's going to be far more cases that we hear about, not just Arthur.
Yeah, I think you're right, Dominique, absolutely. And so sad that his uncle got threatened with arrest and turned away when he was simply trying to look out for his nephew, for whom he had grave concerns. One of the most harrowing cases in recent memory, as you were saying, Paul. Just lastly, slightly lighter, but perhaps not if you're Sir Keir Starmer or Angela Rayner. The ongoing row between those two is rumbling on. Sir Keir Starmer having made the latest move, this following on from making his reshuffle as a bit of a surprise earlier on in the week behind Angela Rayner's back. Well, now he's got rid of her communication head, which is a bit of a blow for his deputy leader.
Yes, it seems that Keir Starmer doesn't really have sort of the bravery to be able to get rid of Angela Rayner outright. So now he seems to have resorted to briefing against her. Particularly with regards to the reshuffle that he did while she was making a speech that many regarded as extremely important. It does seem as though there is a bit of competition between Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner, specifically because there are talks that Angela Rayner apparently wants Keir Starmer's job.
Yeah. Now, Dominic, really good to talk to you this morning. Thank you so much for speaking to us. That is political commentator Dominic Samuels. And did let us know what you think about a lot of those stories that we were just talking about there with Dominic. GB Views at gbnews.uk.
Time now to take a look at what else is making the headlines. And new figures from NHS England show more than 90% of patients requiring specialist care to help them breathe have not had the COVID vaccine. Doctors and nurses are concerned about the knock-on effect that this is having on other treatment, especially for cancer and transplant patients. NHS waiting lists are now growing to 5.8 million people. That was by the end of September.
The Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, says he remains concerned for the thousands of people still without power 8 days after Storm Arwen swept through Scotland and North East England. More wintry weather is expected to affect the area over the next few days, with 4,700 homes still waiting to be reconnected to the national grid.
President Biden will hold an emergency video call with Vladimir Putin on Tuesday to try to ease the tensions over Ukraine. The US Secretary of State, Andrew Blinken, has claimed to have seen evidence that Russia is preparing a large-scale attack on Ukraine, following the largest military build-up on the border since the Russians annexed Crimea in 2014.
Lewis Hamilton's hopes of winning a record 8th Formula One World Championship were helped by a crash for title rival Max Verstappen in qualifying for today's Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Hamilton will start in pole position with Verstappen in third, although the Red Bull driver could yet be given a further grid penalty if he needs to replace a damaged gearbox. Paul Coyte is here with all the sport this morning. He'll have more on that, plus the rest of yesterday's Premier League action.
And today's weather. Sunshine in the northwest, but cloud and showers elsewhere. Highs of 7 degrees and flood warnings in place for the early part of next week.
Now, one of the measures announced by the Irish government this week to help slow the spread of the Omicron variant was the closure of nightclubs from Tuesday until the new year.
Yeah, the Taoiseach, Micheál Martin, announced the strict rules on Friday, which led to outcries in the Irish hospitality industry. Indoor and sporting events will also have to operate at half capacity, and the rules will be in place until the beginning of next year. Well, joining us now is Ian Redmond, owner of the Tramline nightclub in Dublin. A very good morning to you. A huge blow then to you at what would be a very busy time of year.
Absolutely. Morning, guys. Yeah, we closed at the start of lockdown on the 12th of March last year, and we were closed for a total of 600 days. We got to open up 6 weeks ago with no restrictions, bar we had to pre-sell all our events by ticket only online, and you weren't allowed to arrive to our club and pay at the door. So we adopted to these new restrictions, and they actually worked out really well. Out of the 6 weeks, or 4 weeks we were open without restrictions, we sold out every night 1,000 tickets, and it was fantastic to see the smile and the joy on the young people's faces coming into the club. And these were all 18 and 19-year-olds who had never actually even been to a nightclub before, so it was like the rite of passage had been taken away from them over the previous 2 years. So it worked out really, really great. But then 2 weeks ago, they said, no, you're going to have to close at 12 o'clock. And they really were trying to close us down, but didn't want to have to re-implement our wage subsidy schemes and our payment supports. So they tried to get us to close of our own idea, but we actually adapted and we opened from 7 p.m. to 12 a.m. So we opened for that 5-hour window instead of 10 till 3, and it worked out fantastic again. And when they realised they were still coming to our venue, they went on Friday, they decided, no, we're going to close nightclubs down. Now, we did everything right. We did COVID ID passport checks, checked it against their driver's licence or passport and against their ticket on their Eventbrite ticket. So we had a triple check, and we even temperature checked people on the way into the venue. So we did everything right. There was no outbreaks of COVID in the nightclub industry in Ireland whatsoever. But we just felt that our National Public Health Emergency Team, NPHET in Ireland, they have too much control over the government here. And anything they say, they go public, they leak it beforehand. And then the government are under pressure that if they don't comply with NPHET's recommendations, well then they'll look the worse off. So we were kind of snookered. So that's where we're at now. We have to close. We opened last night. We had 1,000 in. And we have to close on Monday as our last night trade. It's fully sold out. And then we have to close for at least a month. And knowing what happened the last time when they said just close for a month, we ended up 19 months closed. So we don't know what way our industry is going to turn out in the next few months.
Yeah. Do you have some sympathy, though, Ian, for Micheál Martin? Because he's getting this advice from scientists, and if he seems to be going against the scientists' advice, then it puts him in a difficult position, because obviously he has an obligation to public health as well.
Just the way I think the young people of Ireland are so disillusioned with Micheál Martin, because he promised them 6 weeks ago or 8 weeks ago when the clubs reopened, if they got fully vaccinated, the clubs would stay open. The economy was going to start to reopen and there would be no backward steps. So he's made promises he can't deliver on and hasn't delivered on. So I've absolutely zero sympathy for Micheál Martin. You know, we've got a coalition government, and really I can't wait till the other side come back in, Fine Gael, because Leo Varadkar, who was Taoiseach, our Prime Minister at the start of lockdown, you know, he was the one who put all the supports in place and gave us some hope. And actually, the supports allowed us to keep our businesses just parked and closed, to pay the rent, pay our service charges, and keep the management team paid, and so they could keep roofs over their heads. So I've absolutely no sympathy for Micheál Martin.
Ian, you talk quite a lot about that need for hope in order for you to carry on after everything you've been through anyway. What sort of support is Micheál Martin offering businesses like you, other nightclubs affected, not least if it does go beyond the month that you suspect it will?
Okay, well, there's a support subsidy scheme called the CRSS, which basically it was 5% of our turnover in 2019, and now that's increased to 12% of our turnover, capped at a certain figure. So that's will be very happily received and useful support to keep our business alive. But the payroll subsidy supports is the EWSS. That's been reduced to just over €200, which is derisory. So for us to keep our team together, the government are going to give us €203 per week per staff member. It was reduced from 70% of the payroll cost down to this 203. So we'll have to try and subsidise the payroll, or else lay the staff off and furlough them and put them on the PUP, the pandemic unemployment payment, and they get €350. Now, the problem with that is for some staff, they'll actually get more than if they stay with us. So the temptation would be then for them to leave and just work off this €350. We're trying to keep our team together, but like if you were there last night to see the anxiety and the tension in the staff, not knowing where they're going to make, what they're going to make for their payroll next week or the following week or over Christmas, they're really upset and just unsure. And it's created a whole lot of uncertainty within the nightclub and the nighttime economy and the late night entertainment industry. People just didn't want to come back. We convinced them to come back, saying that their future was secure. And now it's just not. So it's really, really sad.
Yeah, mentally really stressful, I imagine. Can your nightclub survive even if this carries on, well into the spring?
Well, look, we're lucky we have a healthy balance sheet, and the supports have been good over the last 19 months. So yes, we can. But if it goes on too long, who knows? Like, we are there by the grace of landlords and different suppliers have extended credit to us over the pandemic. And the first thing we did when we reopened is we got in touch with all our suppliers, and we opened with a boom, and we were able to help ourselves by paying off a lot of these debts that had risen over the course of the pandemic. So, yeah, I think we can. We're good for a couple of months, but if it drags on another 6 months, a year, who knows what position we'll be.
And Ian, we've been hearing from our man north of the border that there are suspicions that lots of youngsters will be travelling across to Northern Ireland to make use of nightclubs there, where the restrictions aren't as stringent. And does that make it all the more not only frustrating from a business point of view, but meaningless as well?
Well, not even Northern Ireland. Like, people are flying to London, they're flying to Cardiff every weekend. Like, our flights are all operational. Ryanair are flying a huge amount of flights to London, to Cardiff. Belfast is 70 minutes up the road from Dublin. And yes, that's exactly where they'll be going and where they were going when our nightclubs were closed down. Even last night in Tramline, when we closed at 12, some of the staff, they're heading off to after parties. They're called afters now. And that's where they're all going. So, which is really worrying because, everyone who's in our nightclub was safe. They're all checked, and there wasn't one outbreak of COVID. So going to after parties and with people who may be vaccinated, not vaccinated, that's really worrying. That there's just no controls in place. We operated a safe environment, and the government knows that. And it was just, as I said in the Irish Times, we were made the whipping boys. The nightclub industry were made the whipping boys of the pandemic because we operate a safe business, but it's just been taken away from us now. And the real problem is in the schools. Like, our kids are being muzzled with masks, and COVID is rampant. I have family who are school teachers, and COVID is rampant in the schools. And the government are under too much pressure not to close the schools again. So, yeah, Micheál Martin, he's not in an enviable position, but the way he's delivering his messages, it's all wrong.
Ian, really appreciate your time this morning. Obviously, very stressful for you, difficult time for you and the wider hospitality industry. So thank you. That is Ian Redman from Tramline Nightclub in Dublin.
Yeah, wishing him all the very best. Look, stay with us here on the Great British Breakfast, taking a quick break. After that, we'll be going through your Sunday morning front pages, and we're talking about how the government's levelling up agenda is working in the East Midlands. But first, here's your forecast.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Well, the UK is looking rather cloudy and showery in the east, but brighter in the west. Let's take a look at the details. A few showers will feed into Cornwall in the brisk northerly wind, but elsewhere across southwest England, it's dry with some sunshine. It will feel chilly, though, in the breeze. Meanwhile, a much cloudier day is expected across the southeast of England, and here it will be rather showery too, with a gusty northerly wind. Pembrokeshire could catch an isolated shower, but for the rest of Wales, it's looking dry and bright, albeit quite chilly and breezy here too. Moving over to the Midlands, we can expect an east to west split. Towards the east, there'll be a fair amount of cloud giving some showers, whereas further west, most places should stay dry with some bright weather at times. In the northeast, showers could merge to give some more persistent rain with hill snow. Across this part of the country, the wind will begin to ease, so it won't feel quite as cold. Some showers will continue to feed into the east and southeast of Scotland, but for the rest of the country, there'll be lots of sunshine around. Looking at Northern Ireland, it's likely to see the sunniest weather of all, though, and the wind, I should say, will be noticeably lighter than elsewhere across the UK. During the afternoon and evening, it will become largely dry with clear spells and a frost. And that is how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
A very good morning to you. Welcome back to the Great British Breakfast. Good to have you with us. It is 8:23. Let's look at what is making the front pages this morning, starting with The Independent, which features an exclusive that senior Tories are demanding a radical overhaul of the asylum system to cut the numbers of people attempting dangerous channel crossings.
Here's the Sunday Times. It's leading on pressure being felt by doctors and nurses as a result of COVID-19, reporting new figures show more than 90% of virus sufferers requiring specialist care are unvaccinated.
Sunday Mirror speaks to grieving families that lost loved ones during the pandemic. They expressed their anger following claims Christmas parties were held at number 10 Downing Street during lockdown.
Here's The Observer. It's looking at how public trust in politicians has fallen dramatically since Boris Johnson became Prime Minister. They quote a YouGov poll where 63% of voters believe politicians were merely out for themselves in the wake of the Owen Paterson affair.
Sunday Telegraph's political editor claims the first at-home COVID treatment will be offered to patients by Christmas. The rollout of the antiviral pill will protect the most vulnerable from the Omicron variant It also shows a picture there, as you can see, Prince William in a nice jacket and hat. He says he starts his week by listening to rock music, including AC/DC.
Yeah, although that's not really the sort of thrust of why he's on the front of the paper, is it really? He's talking about his mental health and all of those things, which is what the Sunday Express is focusing in on. They say William's childhood memories of his mother Diana, Princess of Wales, have helped him through difficult times. He recalls singing to Tina Turner's Simply the Best to help calm his nerves before boarding school.
The Daily Mail describes the Prince's torment after witnessing the aftermath of a devastating accident involving a young boy. The headline reads, William's mental health crisis left him feeling as if the whole world was dying.
Here's the Sunday People. It calls for a change in the law following the tragic murder of 6-year-old Arthur Labino Hughes. Paula Hudgell, remember her? She's the adoptive mother of the double amputee Tony Hudgell. He suffered horrific abuse at the hands of his biological parents. She's calling for a child abuse register. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, and on a lighter note, the front page of the Daily Star runs with a celebrity exclusive, how footballing legend David Ginola communicated. What are you laughing at?
Sorry, it's just this
It's a very serious story.
Exclusive.
David Ginola communicated with a ghost during a séance. We'll have more on that breaking story as and when we get it here on GB News.
We'd miss the Star if it went, or wouldn't we? I don't know. I won't go there. Now, the government's promise. Oh, we're doing GB Views now.
Let's do some GB Views.
GB Views, sorry.
Yeah.
Skipping straight on to the next story, but we've got loads, haven't we?
Yeah, lots of you have been getting in touch with us this morning. gbviews@gbnews.uk. On COVID jabs, I've been discharged this week, Michael tells us. This is from Michael Owen. I don't think it's that Michael Owen. Well, maybe it is. Michael tells us, I've been discharged this week following 5 nights in hospital due to COVID pneumonia. Unvaccinated,
So many of these stories.
Indeed, COVID patient, COVID ward, COVID recovery, 30 years tax and national insurance contributions allowed that service. Selfishness comes from those that judge others for a virus. Up to now, I've not been judged or charged by NHS or the Office for National Statistics for using a bed or costing a cancer patient their life. Stop the blaming, he says.
It's so interesting, this email, because, of course, in Greece, they've taken this interesting position whereby over the 60s, if they haven't been vaccinated, have to pay for all of their own medical care, something we sure would never do here. But it is interesting creeping in this kind of blame language because, of course, doctors and nurses have to provide care without apportioning blame, but they are now speaking out saying it is preventing other people from getting treatment. They have that responsibility as well. Jean Brennan's got in touch saying selfish, in capital letters, ... doesn't come close. Cancer patients and people in pain all waiting for operations because COVID has taken the staff and other resources. You should be totally ashamed. People will die because you can't be bothered.
Yeah, but it is, of course, I personally think it's everyone's right whether to get the vaccine or not. People have very legitimate reasons for not getting the vaccine, and it is their personal choice. On the seeming rift at the top of the Labour Party between Sir Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner, the deputy leader, whose head of communications has been suspended by the party this morning.
This one about Arthur Labino Hughes, of course, terribly tragic story. Jeff says, that poor kid, all the experts talking, but nothing gets done. Lessons to be learnt. We've heard it all before.
Yeah, lots of you getting in touch with us this morning. gbviews@gbnews.uk. In the meantime, let's talk about the government's promise to level up Britain. It could mean significant changes for towns and cities across the country. A £4.8 billion fund is being delivered as part of the plan to reduce inequality between regions.
But in the East Midlands, questions have been asked about why Labour local authorities missed out on some money. Our reporter Will Hollis has been looking into it.
Like much of Britain, Worksop was once a thriving market hub, the community embedded in the coal industry. Stephen spent his entire life living here and remembers those better days.
This town you could buy anything. You could even go on market and a man would make you your trousers for £10, any pair of trousers you want.
Now the high street contends with empty shops and antisocial crime. Stephen says he wouldn't leave the Nottinghamshire town, but wants something to change.
There should be more money spent on it instead of like just letting everybody struggling out about. But if they don't want to spend money on it, why don't they just flatten it and start again and build all new from the beginning and have a better town?
Worksop's part of Bassetlaw. In 2019, the constituency was one of the many red wall seats that voted Conservative. As part of an election promise, Boris Johnson said he'd level up former Labour heartlands after decades of inequality. Fast forward 2 years and £4.8 billion is available. Councillors here hoped they'd get 20 million to help boost business around the high street. However, when the first round of levelling up cash was released, Worksop wasn't on the list. A surprise to Bassettlaw's MP, the town's considered a priority under the government's plan. He claims that the bid was delivered past the deadline.
When we actually saw the list, we weren't on the list of successful projects, but we also weren't on the list of unsuccessful projects. That meant that questions had to be answered, and it later transpired that we'd either submitted a bid late or indeed no bid was submitted at all, and that really shocked me.
Bassettlaw District Council's in charge of the bid. Its Labour leader challenged the accusation on Twitter, describing the government as incompetent. Earlier this week, the argument landed in the Prime Minister's lap.
What can this government do to help support areas like mine who have struggled with their bids in order to make sure they are successful the next time around?
I thank you I thank my honourable friend very much. Well, the step number one is to vote out those dozy Labour councillors, Mr. Speaker. But I can tell him and I thank him for the excellent representation he gives to Bassettlaw, Mr. Speaker. And I can tell him the second round of bidding for the Levelling Up Fund will open in the spring of next year.
When asked about what happened, a Department for Levelling Up minister confirmed that the bid was delivered late. In a statement, Bassettlaw District Council said that while it is disappointing not to have been considered in the first round of funding, it is working with the department to gain feedback. There is more funding to be won, but some in the town are sceptical. There's still no clear guidance of what levelling up actually means.
For so many people who live and work in places like Worksop and other similar towns, they've heard the phrase levelling up used so often in so many speeches over the last 2 years that it's starting to lose all of its meaning. And many people are sceptical of this cash funding and if it will ever come to places like this.
We're given second best. Up north, we've always been classed as second-class citizens. Yet we're your grafters. Every time you want anything, you come to north. So, don't you think it's about time, as you realised, this levelling up means levelling up 50-50. Not you down south and us up north. We're one country, and one country should be on the same money.
Government policy around levelling up is expected before the end of the year. The next round of funding is released next spring. Will Hollis reporting from Worksop in the East Midlands.
Good stuff from Will. Stay with us here on the Great British Breakfast. Come up in a moment. We'll be hearing from Paul Coy. Paul, we've heard Australia have released their first 11 for the Ashes opener.
I believe that to be the case. We'll find out very shortly. I think I'm more interested at the moment in the fact that David Ginola's being haunted. I just wonder whether we can get the psychic on and find out whether Newcastle are going to stay up and whether Spurs are actually going to beat Norwich today. But I think it's too late. It's too late for me to get him on. Anyway, we're going to be joined by Paul Newman from the Daily Mail talking about cricket and the Ashes, which starts on Wednesday, coming up in a second.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Well, good morning. Lots going on today outside the Premier League as the delayed 2020-2021 Women's FA Cup final finally gets underway today as Arsenal face Chelsea at Wembley Stadium. Arsenal are around to add to their record 14 cup wins when they tackle their, rivals for the third time in 6 years. Chelsea, meanwhile, last lifted the cup in 2018 by beating Arsenal again 3-1, making this one of the unpredictable finals that we've seen in years. In the rugby, very busy day for the sides in the Gallagher Premiership yesterday. Exeter Chiefs edged past Saracens 18-15 in a gritty encounter that went down to the very last few minutes. Ollie Hassel-Collins' hat-trick helped inform London Irish claim a 43-21 win over Newcastle. Northampton Saints eased to a 40-19 victory over bottom side Bath. And finally, Worcester Warriors held a point lead to secure victory over Wasps in the Midlands derby. The only game today, by the way, sees Leicester Tigers take on Harlequins, and that's at 3 o'clock this afternoon. Now, the eagerly anticipated Saudi Arabian Grand Prix will see Sir Lewis Hamilton start 2 places ahead of championship rival Max Verstappen. So Lewis claimed pole position in a blistering qualifying session that saw his Mercedes teammate Valtteri Bottas finish in second. Max Verstappen could have been in first had he avoided a mistake which left his Red Bull smashing into the wall right at the end of the final lap. Anthony Yard's spectacular knockout win against rival Lyndon Arthur to win the Commonwealth and WBO Intercontinental light heavyweight titles. The new champion earned redemption, having been beaten by Arthur 12 months ago in another brutal encounter. Anthony Yard now sinks a world title fight against the current WBO world champion, Joe Smith Jr. And Arthur, meanwhile, will be licking his wounds after the first defeat of his career. New Australia captain Pat Cummins has confirmed the 11 that he will take into the opening match of the Ashes. Cummins said it was a tight one between Travis Head and Queensland captain Usman Khawaja to bat in the middle order, but Head will take the number 5 slot. Elsewhere, Mitchell Starc holds his place in the bowling attack. The first test begins on the 8th of December in Brisbane at the Gabba. And joining me now to talk all things Ashes and Australia, the Daily Mail cricket correspondent Paul Newman is with us right now. Morning, Paul.
Morning, Paul. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Good to see you. It's fair to say probably the most subdued start to an Ashes that you've ever seen?
It's really strange, isn't it? But normally by now they'll have played 3 warm-up games. The anticipation would have been building. We'd have been talking about players' form and all sorts of selection dilemmas. But it's really crept up on us, hasn't it? And it's crept up, obviously, because of COVID and because of the lack of preparation time, but also because of the terrible weather they've had in Brisbane, which has stopped the England team having any sort of meaningful match practice at all. So it's sneaking up on us, and the weather forecast is bad for Tuesday night when the game starts. But we can only hope that that's wrong, and once it gets underway, I think it will feel like a proper Ashes series again.
I don't want to sound as if, a little defeatist about it, but could it be good news for England if there is a little bit of bad weather? Because the Gabba is someplace to go to, isn't it? And that's where Australia love to play us.
Absolutely. They've got a formidable record there. We know that. But they did lose to India early this year at the Gabba, which broke their formidable fortress record. And I think this bad weather they've had there, the La Nina weather pattern, does provide a bit of hope for England because the conditions should suit England's seamers. Stuart Broad and Jimmy Anderson come right back into play, whereas traditionally, of course, on Australian pitches, our bowlers have struggled with the exception of 2010 and 11. But that was the last time this La Nina weather pattern was hanging over Queensland. So that might be a bit of an omen. 10-11 when England famously won 3-1. The England bowlers were more into play. Obviously, originally their plan in this series was to go in with all-out pace to try and match Australian fire with fire in the form of Jofra Archer, Ollie Stone and Mark Wood. But Archer and Stone have fallen by the wayside injured, and they only have Wood for extreme pace. So they'll start off very much as underdogs, I think. But maybe there is just a little bit more hope than we envisaged.
I guess you've got to be an amateur weatherman as well as a cricket correspondent, haven't you, when we're playing in these games most of the time. But also, COVID aside, it's not been the best build-up. I mean, we mentioned that there for England, but also the same thing goes for Australia as well, because they've had their problems, haven't they? Of course they have.
Absolutely. It's been a terrible time for cricket, of course, with the racism scandal involving Yorkshire hanging over England, and now with the Tim Payne affair with Australia. So there's lots of noise, as it were, surrounding both sides. England haven't had the best of year for Test cricket. They lost to New Zealand, and they were trailing India when the last Test was abandoned. But Australia haven't barely played at all any red ball cricket, not even any Sheffield Shield cricket. So they'll be severely undercooked. What you're going to see is, as we've said right at the start of this, is two of the most unprepared sides that have ever gone into an Ashes series. Certainly the most underprepared England side that's gone into an Ashes series. So that doesn't particularly augur well. The first match, it effectively could be a bit of a warm-up, because there hasn't been any warm-ups. As we said about when England won in 2010-11 under Andrew Strauss, they played 3 fantastic warm-up games, treated them like a mini Ashes series, played properly, and that really got them off to the perfect start. But now they've not had anything like that sort of luxury. They just had some match practice between themselves and the Lions, and 2 days of that was rained off. So it is all a bit low key at the moment, but I think it will burst into life once the series gets going. With Australia now under a new captain in Pat Cummins, interesting that he declared his hand overnight, as you said, and named his team. It's pretty much as we expected. Travis Head and Mitchell Starc getting the 2 places that were up for grabs, as it were. So he's declared his hand, Pat Cummins. He's very unusual for a fast bowler to be a captain of any side, let alone an Australian side. So it'd be interesting to see how that one goes.
So first time in about 50 years, isn't it? So I'm guessing that over 5 tests, the chances are he's not going to be there for all of it, which would then leave the vice-captain and back to the ball tampering, and then that would leave Steve Smith in charge. Is that going to happen, do we think?
Yeah, certainly Steve Smith. I mean, I think Australia are confident Pat Cummins can get through all 5 tests. He had a terrible injury record when he was younger, but his body seems to be much stronger these days. He's come through all that, and they are hoping he can get through 5 tests. But it's a hell of a workload for any fast bowler, especially with the lack of preparation they've had. So there's got to be a question mark as to whether he can play all 5 games. They're back-to-back. They're ridiculous. Over 42 days. I don't think an Ashes series has been played over such a short space of time. So then we come to Steve Smith, and he's going to be very much a leading figure in the side. In any case, even if Cummins is on the field, there's every chance he's going to be doing a lot of the captaincy to ease the pressure on a fast bowler. And there's lots of debate in Australia as to whether he should. After what happened with Sandpapergate, he was banned from having a leadership role for 2 years. So there is an argument to say he's served his time. He's allowed it back at the helm. But there will be a lot of attention on that. And quite rightly, I think a lot of Australians, including the likes of Ian Chappell and Shane Warne, big names, have queried whether Smith should be allowed to have this role. So they're beating themselves up about that. Payne, of course, just disappeared from the team in the most unlikely fashion a few weeks ago. So all's not completely well in their camp. From a personal point of view, I think Smith has served his time. There's no reason why he can't have a leadership role now, but it will bring some unwanted attention on the Australians, I think.
Paul, really good to speak to you. Thanks a lot for your time. We'll keep our fingers crossed. We're looking forward to it. West Ham, let's move on to football now. Dealt Chelsea a serious dent to their title hopes after a 5-goal thriller at the London Stadium yesterday. Late goal from Arthur Masuaku gave West Ham the victory, even though he did admit that he didn't actually truly mean to score. The loss leaves Chelsea, though, in third, but still only 2 points behind the new league leaders. Despite the positive result, though, West Ham boss David Moyes refused to get overexcited.
Well, I think that gives us a chance of, I wouldn't say being successful, but certainly not being a poor team. I think if you've got the determination, the character to keep it going. And it was tough at times. I was really disappointed to lose the second goal just before half-time, because we'd got back in the game and we were in the middle of, we lose a player just right on half-time, and it looked as if we were going to lose Kirk as well at that time as well. So we really just had a bad sort of 3 or 4 minutes where we couldn't really get things together. But I thought the resilience of the players, we tried to fix it a little bit at half-time and make it better. And thankfully we got there.
Bad 3 or 4 minutes, but the other 86 were pretty good. Man City claimed the top spot in the Premier League with a convincing win over Claudio Ranieri's Watford. Bernardo Silva scored twice, putting a man-of-the-match display. Another great display from him to help the English reigning champions take all 3 points back to Manchester. Pep Guardiola said after the game that his side had reached their highest standard as they reclaim the top spot for the first time since they won the league back in May. Now, Claudio Ranieri was... Now, this is a strange one. He was shockingly pleased, even though they lost after the game, despite the loss.
Yes, I'm satisfied. But of course, I'm satisfied because I'm thinking we played 3 matches against big teams, Manchester United, Chelsea, and Manchester City, and we got 3 points. Somebody told me at the beginning to start these 3 big matches. Claudio, at the end of the Manchester City, you will have 3 points. Are you happy? I'm happy.
He's pretty happy. I'd like to see him when he loses or when he wins even. In the other games, it seemed to be late goals across the board. Lone Callum Wilson goal gave Newcastle their first win over relegation rivals Burnley. Neil Maupay scored in the 98th minute to salvage a point for Brighton in the South Coast derby against Southampton as they drew 1-1. Divock Origi scored a last-minute winner to sink Wolverhampton Wanderers at Molineux as Liverpool won that game 1-0. And today's games see 3 games kick off at 2 o'clock. Leeds square off against former Championship rivals Brentford. Ralph Rangnick takes his first game in charge of Manchester United for their clash with Crystal Palace, and Tottenham Hotspur play bottom-placed Norwich. That game is at 4:30, and Steven Gerrard faces former manager Brendan Rodgers as Aston Villa face Leicester. Well, Everton and Arsenal fans have to wait until Monday night to see their teams meet. Anyway, that's it for us for now. We're going to speak to Harry Redknapp, talking about Spurs and plenty of other football coming up in an hour's time.
Good
Thank
stuff,
you,
Paul.
Paul.
Oh,
Yeah,
look at that.
I was going to say, and looking forward to seeing Harry Redknapp later on as well.
Yeah, me
good.
too.
Always good to see Harry.
Let's take a look at what else is in the headlines today. Airlines and travel companies are criticising the government after a sudden change to the COVID travel restrictions last night. Everyone now arriving in the UK will have to get a test before they travel, whilst still having to self-isolate until they get a negative test within 2 days of returning to the country. The new measures will come into force on Tuesday morning. The government has also added Nigeria to the red list of countries which require hotel quarantine from tomorrow.
The Prime Minister has ordered a wide-ranging investigation into the murder of Arthur Labino Hughes in the hope of preventing a similar tragedy in the future. The inquiry will look at the role of the police, schools, social services and probation watchdogs in the 6-year-old's death. Arthur's stepmother, Emma Tustin, was jailed for 29 years for murder and child cruelty, whilst his father, Thomas Hughes, received 21 years for manslaughter.
New figures from NHS England show more than 90% of patients requiring specialist care to help them breathe have not had the COVID vaccine. Doctors and nurses are concerned about the knock-on effect this is having on other treatments, especially for cancer and transplant patients, with the NHS waiting list now growing to 5.8 million people by the end of September.
There remains concerns for the thousands of people still without power 8 days after Storm Arwen swept through Scotland and northeast England. More wintry weather is expected to affect the area over the next few days, with 4,700 homes still waiting to be reconnected to the national grid.
Today's weather, it's quite settled for now. The northwest will enjoy some sunshine, but it will be cloudy with showers elsewhere. Highs of 7 degrees, but there are weather warnings in place with flooding expected in some areas in the early part of the week.
You're watching the Great British Breakfast. Really good to have you with us this morning. Now, could there be unexpected consequences for Northern Ireland when the Republic returns to strict COVID restrictions on Tuesday?
Commercially, there is expected to be an upturn as people cross the border to take advantage of looser COVID rules. But is the potential price a rise in the rate of coronavirus cases, and what pressure is being put on the Northern Ireland executive thanks to the actions of the Dublin government?
Well, our Northern Ireland reporter Dougie Beattie has more.
My message this evening is a difficult one. It is difficult because even though Ireland has done very well as a country and you have done everything that has been asked of you, we have received some very stark advice from our Chief Medical Officer and our public health experts that requires the reintroduction of a number of restrictions. From the 7th of December until the 9th of January, nightclubs will close. Strict social distancing will be required in all bars and restaurants, including hotels, and they must all revert to the situation that was in place before the 22nd of October.
The words of the Irish Taoiseach after he tries to get control of a spike in the COVID virus.
While the Republic of Ireland imposed tighter restrictions, many of their citizens, unfettered, come north for shopping, nights out and entertainment.
The Northern Ireland Executive have went head-to-head with its hospitality industry over COVID passports and insists it can trace the visitors from the south.
Well, actually, one of the things that we have in place, again, in the last few weeks that we didn't have this time last year, was the sharing of not just passenger locator form in regards to all international travellers who are now coming in through Dublin. That's been shared through our public health agencies as well. But it's also, there is a requirement in all hospitality to take contact details of anyone entering them. So that's irrespective of COVID certification or not. That's already part of the requirement that is there and is established.
While southern restrictions will no doubt increase numbers coming north, the hospitality industry sees problems ahead.
And I know people will say, I've cried poverty now for almost 2 years through COVID. The government support we got because we made the case has really helped, and we're really grateful for it. But it's all stopping. At the end of the financial year, the rent protection stops, the insolvency protection stops, VAT will probably let you go back to 20%, rates will come back in. And if we don't get Christmas period to make some money, we'll not survive that.
There's the Executive COVID Recovery Task Force, which is based in the Executive Office. They have been carrying out very specific engagement with the sectors, and I'm sure that the hospitality industry and others that are raising concerns that the Executive COVID Task Force will work to try to address those.
The Executive now finds itself in an awkward place, welcoming visitors from outside its borders while putting pressure on its own to uphold challenged legislation. The Chief Medical Officer tried to stay clear of politics and stressed the importance of vaccine and just how far we have came.
Well, all pandemics come to an end when a sufficient number of the people in the population are immune, and preferably through vaccination. And we're making huge strides, as the Minister has said, with our vaccination programme. Over 3 million doses of a vaccine that hadn't been invented this time last year. So let's be in no doubt we're making progress, and we have the capacity to modify the current vaccines if indeed that becomes apparent with the Omicron variant.
Dougie Beattie, GB News, Belfast.
There you go. It's looking very Christmassy in Belfast at the moment. Speaking of which, 20 days to go until
counting.
Christmas Day. Have you not done your Christmas shopping?
No. And I've got 7 godchildren, a niece and a nephew, and 2 of my own kids. Plus, I get really stressed, but I'm not alone in that. Lots of people find Christmas stressing, whether it be the shopping, whether it be the catering for everybody.
Yeah.
So today, our mindset coach, Janie Holiday, who cheers us up every single week, is here to tell us how we can have a mindful Christmas.
Yeah, Janie, you've done all your Christmas shopping. It's all wrapped. You've got the tree up there. I imagine even the turkey is in the oven waiting to be switched on, and you're really chilled out, right?
Not quite, but I do, as I've shared before, really love to have a stress-free Christmas, and there are some key things that you can do to make that happen. I think, first of all, stop looking at what other people are doing. We've all got different schedules, different circumstances, situations, all those kinds of things. I've actually got the week after next off work whilst my kids are still at school, so I'm going to be doing a lot of things then. But one of the ways that we can get really miserable and overloaded is to look at what other people are doing and compare ourselves to whether that's people that are ahead of us or behind us with Christmas shopping, what they're doing for Christmas. Also, there's lots of pressure. I've really been observing over the last couple of weeks just how much pressure there is, especially on parents, of what's expected of them this time of year. Everyone with matching pajamas or just the list is endless. So as I've said here before, my big tip for everyone is you've got to define what Christmas you want. And when you feel yourself feeling stressed or pressured, you need to push back on yourself and ask, how can I think about this differently, or what can I do differently?
You hit the nail on the head with that. Somebody said to me, comparison is the thief of joy. And it just is. It absolutely is. Everybody's different, and it ruins it takes all the fun out of everything if you compare yourself to other people. So I like that one.
Yeah, definitely. And I think especially with social media, because we see images and photographs of people, and then we do what I call comparing our back of house with somebody else's front of house. And that's how we can make ourselves feel really rubbish this time of year. I think my other big tip as well, whether we're dealing with last minute COVID restrictions or difficult family members, is to put your focus on what you can control and let go of the rest. Now, when we look at that, sometimes that's about creating a plan B. I've been saying to all of my clients this week, plan the Christmas that you want. Also have a positive plan B. The more you prepare yourself for that, the more you'll be able to deal with that. And also, if you do have difficult relatives, because, Christmas is not all full of joy for some people, it's about looking at how you can change your own behaviour. You can't change what somebody else does, how they behave, but you can change your own. So it's always about, with mindset, looking at how you're thinking and pushing back on yourself to think about what you can do differently.
Yeah, do you know what one of the hardest times in the run-up to Christmas I find is when you're food shopping and you go into the supermarket in the week leading up to it and you've got all the best intentions to be really chilled out and you've got a budget and you're not going to go over the top, and it's just contagious, like people grabbing stuff off the shelves, and you come out with this trolley and it's like piled high and you've bought way too much food and you end up throwing it all out.
Yeah, and I mean, look, there's so much waste this time of year. I was reading an article this week about how many Christmas jumpers are thrown in the bin. I got all mine and my family's from charity shops this year. I think food shopping is another example. We're just bombarded with all of these incredible things that we can have. And just because there's so many of them, we don't have to have all of them. So my big tip for that bit of preparation is to get a checklist of what you're going to buy, thinking about the sort of money that you want to spend as well. Just as you said, it's so easy to lose control of finances this year. And as I've shared on here before, stay out of urgent mode. Just spend a little bit of time getting yourself ready for what you need to do. So, Isabel, start your Christmas shopping tomorrow. Perhaps if you can find an hour, just get started. And then you will feel that you're a little bit more in control. And then you can start to enjoy it, which is what the focus and priority is, surely, I think, this time of year.
You're absolutely right. We always love your advice. I've said it before. I do think Christianity is like the original form of mindfulness. And of course, Christianity, this is a Christian festival at the end of the day. So if we take away from it one thing, it is, I suppose, to be a bit mindful at this time of year.
Not just buy loads of stuff. Jenny, thank you. Appreciate your time, Jenny Holiday there. Right, coming up, we'll have more on the latest travel restrictions put in place overnight to slow the spread of COVID. If you're just waking up, that is what has been happening. What damage could be done to our businesses and holidays as a result. All the details to come after the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Well, the UK is looking rather cloudy and showery in the east, but brighter in the west. Let's take a look at the details. A few showers will feed into Cornwall in the brisk northerly wind, but elsewhere across southwest England, it's dry with some sunshine. It will feel chilly, though, in the breeze. Meanwhile, a much cloudier day is expected across the southeast of England, and here it will be rather showery too, with a gusty northerly wind. Pembrokeshire could catch an isolated shower, but for the rest of Wales, it's looking dry and bright, albeit quite chilly and breezy here too. Moving over to the Midlands, we can expect an east to west split. Towards the east, there'll be a fair amount of cloud giving some showers, whereas further west, most places should stay dry with some bright weather at times. In the northeast, showers could merge to give some more persistent rain with hill snow. Across this part of the country, the wind will begin to ease, so it won't feel quite as cold. Some showers will continue to feed into the east and southeast of Scotland. But for the rest of the country, there'll be lots of sunshine around. Looking at Northern Ireland, it's likely to see the sunniest weather of all, though, and the wind, I should say, will be noticeably lighter than elsewhere across the UK. During the afternoon and evening, it will become largely dry with clear spells and a frost. And that is how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
It's just gone 9 o'clock. A very good morning. You're watching The Great British Breakfast here on GB News with Paul Hawkins and with me, Isabel Webster. Stay with us. Coming up on the show.
Yeah, more COVID travel restrictions have been introduced by the government overnight, meaning mandatory testing. And also Nigeria has been added to the red list. Is the government being too cautious with this new Omicron variant, or has it got it right?
NHS England's revealed 90% of COVID critical care beds are being occupied by unvaccinated patients. Does that change your mind about getting the jab or introducing tougher restrictions?
Will the Irish Republic's return to lockdown light have a knock-on effect for Northern Ireland? We'll have the latest on that.
And Manchester City returned to the top of the table after another thrilling day in the Premier League. As always, you don't need to go anywhere else for your Sunday sport.
Yeah, all that to come here on The Great British Breakfast.
So you guessed it, our top story this morning, those changes to COVID travel rules. This time, from 4 a.m. on Tuesday, anyone entering the UK will have to show proof of a negative PCR or lateral flow test taken before travel. That's as well as having to self-isolate when they get back until they receive a negative PCR test within 2 days of arrival. Anyone now arriving from Nigeria from tomorrow morning will also have to spend 10 days in a quarantine hotel. That's after the African nation was added to the red list.
But will the new restrictions be effective in slowing the rise in cases of the Omicron variant? Joining us now is Shahid Jamil, a virologist at the University of Oxford. Really good to see you this morning, Jamil. It feels a bit silly sort of putting in these restrictions. Omicron is here.
Yes, absolutely. Restrictions can only delay. Restrictions will never stop a virus. Because by the time you have discovered it elsewhere, you have discovered it in your country, it's already there. And, you know, the case in Netherlands shows that a sample from the 11th of November came positive, much before South Africa even found their virus. So this illustrates the point. Yes, it delays, but it never stops.
So do you think hotel quarantine is a pointless mechanism, and do you think it would be better to rely instead on these tests that the government have brought in overnight, these PCR tests pre-departure and also 2 days of self-isolation on arrival, which have been in existence for about a week now?
Yes, I think so in this case, because it does appear that while the virus is transmitting much better than Delta, the symptoms appear to be milder, And the time it takes from infection to symptoms is also shorter. So therefore, it makes sense then to have a pre-departure PCR test and then have have people tested when they arrive. I believe there's some arrangement at the airport to test people there itself. But within 2 days, I think is sensible. So putting countries on the red list, assuming that more and more virus will come from there, is really based on no evidence, or at best very little evidence at this point.
Shahid, obviously there's no solid, consistent data yet on this new variant. But if that's right, that the time between getting it and displaying symptoms is shorter, then that would mean it's not as easy for the variant to spread, right?
Well, yes, the longer it takes between infection and symptoms, it's better the virus spreads better, simply because you don't know that you're infected. If you are infected, if you have a cough, if you have a sore throat, you are unlikely to mix with people, especially in these times. So yes, that is in general true.
Speaking of mixing with people, it is, of course, the Christmas season. I was in Covent Garden yesterday. I've never seen it busier. People seem to be carrying on with life as normal, which is what the government has said to do. But, of course, we know that Sage met on Friday and Nerve Tag. They're expressing concerns. They would like to see the government bringing in things like working from home until Christmas and other measures to try and mitigate the impact of Omicron on the British health system. What's your view on that?
Well, of course, Christmas is a time when you meet families, when you meet friends. But also, Christmas is a time when we must also exercise patience. It's really interesting that the same people who worry themselves to death over Omicron are not wearing masks. And that just seems very silly. Even though there are restrictions or advice on wearing a mask, a lot of people are not wearing one. And I keep saying this, that, it's whether it's this variant or that variant, a good mask will stop every variant. So please continue to just protect yourself and wear masks and not worry so much about it.
Yeah, can I ask you about that? It really interests me because it does feel like the issue of masks, above any other part of the COVID debate, seems to have been adopted by people from difficult political persuasions. So it's almost as if you're anti-mask, then you're going to be a Brexiteer, you're anti-authority, and if you're pro-mask, you're seen as somehow left-wing. Is that a big regret for you, that this has become a political weapon almost, when quite frankly, whether or not it works 100%, it is some small measure in trying to reduce the impact of COVID?
Well, absolutely. I mean, nothing works 100%. No drug works 100%. No vaccine works 100%. Your seatbelts don't work 100%. But it doesn't mean that you go out and jump in front of a coming bus. There are certain regulations which have been put in there based on scientific evidence. So let us follow that. Let us forget all the politics. And unfortunately, COVID, not just in the UK, but all over the world, has been full of politics. You don't control a pandemic with politics. You control it by building trust in people so that people can comply. And that's how it should be. It's not about right or left or center. It's about protecting people, and it's about people being intelligent and smart to protect themselves. That's about it.
Yeah. Just finally, Shahid, what would your advice be to those that are weighing up whether to go to their Christmas parties or not?
Well, let me give you my example. I was supposed to travel to India for the wedding of a very close family member on Thursday last week, and I didn't travel because of all the travel restrictions. And frankly, I didn't want to spend 8 hours in a closed space in an airplane. So, just get this doubt off your mind. Enjoy Christmas. It's a good time, but also enjoy it with caution. and take all the precautions.
Jamil, virologist at Oxford University. Good to talk to you this morning. Thanks very much indeed.
Yeah, very difficult decisions for a lot of people, aren't there? She's saying there that he had to miss a wedding. Paul's been in touch with us. Once again, Christmas holiday ruined by this government, reintroducing testing at our expense. I will not pay for these tests, just another tax put on us by this government in an attempt to claw back the money.
Doug says, I do not believe people that refuse to take the vaccine are selfish. Other critical patients are dying, notably cancer patients, because of their stubbornness and selfish behaviour.
Yeah, GB Views at gbnews.uk. It's coming up to 9:10. You're with the Great British Breakfast. Really good to have you with us this morning. Some other news that is making the headlines. New figures from NHS England show more than 90% of patients requiring specialist care to help them breathe have not had the COVID vaccine. Doctors and nurses are concerned about the knock-on effect this is having on other treatments, especially for cancer and transplant patients, with the NHS waiting list growing to 5.8 million people by the end of September.
Prime Minister Boris Johnson says he remains concerned for the thousands of people still without power 8 days after Storm Arwen swept through Scotland and North East England. More wintry weather is expected to affect the area over the next few days, with 4,700 homes still waiting to be reconnected to the national grid.
President Biden will hold an emergency video call with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin on Tuesday to try to ease the tensions over Ukraine. The US Secretary of State Andrew Biden claims to have seen evidence Russia is preparing a large-scale attack on Ukraine following the largest military build-up on the border since the Russians annexed Crimea in 2014.
Lewis Hamilton's hopes of winning a record 8th Formula One World Championship were helped by a crash for title rival Max Verstappen in qualifying for today's Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Hamilton will start in pole position, Verstappen in third, although the Red Bull driver could yet be given a further grid penalty if he needs to replace a damaged gearbox. Paul Coit will be here later this hour with all the sport.
Yeah, and your weather. Sunshine in the northwest, but cloud and showers elsewhere and highs of 7 degrees. But flood warnings are in place for the early part of next week.
Now, as we've been telling you this morning, doctors and nurses have been expressing anger and concern about the number of critical care beds currently being filled by unvaccinated COVID patients.
However, some good news. The first at-home treatment for COVID-19 could reportedly be offered to patients before Christmas to help protect the most vulnerable from the Omicron variant. Joining us now is Professor Lawrence Young, Vice President of the Medical School at the University of Warwick. A very good morning to you. First of all, how excited should we be about this at-home treatment?
Well, I think anything that we can use to help in this fight against coronavirus has got to be welcome. And we've got a number of things in our armoury now, and there are 2 new drugs. This is one of them that can be used, but that has to be used in the very early stages of infection. So this is an important development, particularly for vulnerable elderly folk, those who don't respond well to vaccination. So it's a fantastic development, and we will see even more new antivirals coming through over the next few months.
How early? And the problem with coronavirus is it's difficult to know when you have it because it takes so long for the symptoms to appear.
Yeah, this is the real problem with this. So this is going to be people with early on with symptoms who test positive, and then you have a narrow window, really, because what we've seen and what we know now about coronavirus infection is there are 2 stages. There's the infection stage when your body is growing the virus and your body's responding to it. And then there's an over-response or a hyper-response that gives people the very, very severe symptoms that result in hospitalization. But the data from the studies from this drug demonstrate that you can prevent hospitalization, probably up to 30% or so. But what you've got to do is get that drug early. And I think that's going to be the challenge with this. So as soon as you've got symptoms and you test positive.
How early, Lawrence?
Well, it's got to be within a few days of developing symptoms. So it's got to be within that sort of 5-day window, really, developing symptoms. That is the easiest drug. There's no point giving it to somebody when they're fully in hospital. It's not going to work. So I think this is the issue. It's about how do you organise this? And so the idea here is people with that report symptoms that are on the more vulnerable side of things and have comorbidities will be provided with the drug very quickly. And that's got to happen. And that's the bit that I think I'm a little bit concerned about, the logistics, getting that drug to people within that time frame.
Yeah. As you say, though, this is just one of a number of available options in our armoury against the virus. Given that we do have so many wonderful things at our fingertips, how concerned should we be about the Omicron variant? Because, there are so many people saying this is just an overreaction, that all the evidence from South Africa is that the vaccines are not evaded, that it's mild at this stage. And I have to say that evidence at the moment is very early. Do you share that view, or do you think that the government's response has been proportionate so far?
Well, I think the government response I think we should be going further. I hate to say this, but I think it's really worrying. I've just seen the latest data from South Africa, and it's very, very worrying. And in the situation where caution is better than leaving things be, we've dithered and delayed a lot through this pandemic. I would be going even further with restrictions at this stage. We're seeing massive. No, so I'm just saying that it's just worth noting that over the last 2 weeks, there's been a 50-fold increase in the number of cases of infection in South Africa. And I think all these reports that say, it's a mild infection, well, a lot of these youngsters are young people. There is a 6-fold increase in hospitalizations. And something really disturbing is they're seeing youngsters under the age of 5 getting sick in quite numbers, which we've not seen before. So my view is, whilst we don't know, and I agree, we've got to wait to get more data, I would be really, really cautious over the next few weeks.
Interesting. It's so hard, isn't it? Because, we sort of all become armchair virologists and we all think we know a little bit, and of course defer to your knowledge on this. But, our understanding, or we've been told, haven't we, that these mutations shouldn't be leading to a more deadly version of the virus because they don't want to kill their host, the people that host the virus. So lots of us want to believe that as we come through, the years that this may be before the end of the pandemic, that actually it's not going to be the case that, for example, children are going to be targeted or younger people are being worse affected. So are we getting a false sense of hope from that then?
Yeah, we are. And I think we're also getting a rather selfish form of hope, because the idea is that, we can sort ourselves out, we're okay, and there's been a lot of complacency in this country. What this tells us is, as long as the virus continues to spread elsewhere, in populations that have low vaccination rates, it will continue to mutate and throw up all sorts of horrible variants. Are we going to have to be in this cycle endlessly? Of worrying and being cautious and bringing in additional restrictions? No, I think what we've got to do, of course, is make sure that our population is careful and that we do as much as we can with booster vaccinations and with other mitigations. But on the other side of it, we've got to manage the pandemic globally. We've got to stop the virus from spreading in other countries, because as long as it spreads, we'll be in this endless cycle. And so it's in all our interest to make sure that we support and in any way possible help vaccine distribution across the globe.
Lawrence, I'm assuming the virology department at the University of Warwick will not be having a Christmas party this year.
No, that's right. No. Sadly, no. I think we've all got to. My view about this is we've all got to do what we feel comfortable with, recognising that we're faced with not only a new variant that will be in hundreds of people in this country. We've got to get real about this. This Omicron variant will be everywhere now. So, there'll be hundreds of cases in this country, and it will keep going up and up and up over the next few weeks. And if what we've seen in South Africa happens here, it will compete with the Delta variant. But we already have massively high levels of Delta too. And there will be people who are vulnerable. So we've got a wonderful blanket of immune protection at one level, particularly with boosters, but people will still be vulnerable. So my view is, just be careful and do what you feel comfortable with. And if don't go into large gatherings.
What if people feel comfortable doing that? If they're triple vaxxed and they test negative on the day of the event? I mean, we've just had an email from Margaret Jackson coming in going, this professor is scaremongering. Why?
I'm not scaremongering. I'm just saying, let's be cautious. Surely this is a situation where once bitten, twice shy. We've been here before with the Delta variant. If you know you could do something to protect yourself, your family, your friends, and your community, why would you not do that? We're not talking about massive inconveniences. It was always going to be the case that this Christmas was not going to be a normal Christmas. Better than last year, of course, but not completely normal. So we're talking about people being sensible. We're talking about, it's just you taking that personal responsibility.
Yeah.
I don't think it has to be mandated by government. So that's me. If you're comfortable, go for it. But I would say my advice would be knowing a little bit about this. Avoid crowded indoor spaces, particularly if they're poorly ventilated. Yeah, do a lateral flow test before going out. That's great. And I think just limiting the size of gatherings and just wear face coverings. These are not major inconveniences, but they'll help us all whilst we learn more about this. Why leave it for another month or so when we might have something that's really dangerous in the population that's also affecting our children? Why would we do that when we could do simple things now that will help?
Listen, Professor Lawrence, it's really good to talk to you this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Professor Lawrence Young there from the University of Warwick on GB News.
Yeah, coming up after the break, we're going to be discussing how a former soldier has made the transition from military to civilian life with Captain John Hoyle. But first, here's the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Well, the UK is looking rather cloudy and showery in the east, but brighter in the west. Let's take a look at the details. A few showers will feed into Cornwall in the brisk northerly wind, but elsewhere across southwest England, it's dry with some sunshine. It will feel chilly, though, in the breeze. Meanwhile, a much cloudier day is expected across the southeast of England, and here it will be rather showery too, with a gusty northerly wind. Pembrokeshire could catch an isolated shower, but for the rest of Wales, it's looking dry and bright, albeit quite chilly and breezy here too. Moving over to the Midlands, we can expect an east to west split. Towards the east, there'll be a fair amount of cloud giving some showers, whereas further west, most places should stay dry with some bright weather at times. In the northeast, showers could merge to give some more persistent rain with hill snow. Across this part of the country, the wind will begin to ease, so it won't feel quite as cold. Some showers will continue to feed into the east and southeast of Scotland. But for the rest of the country, there'll be lots of sunshine around. Looking at Northern Ireland, it's likely to see the sunniest weather of all, though, and the wind, I should say, will be noticeably lighter than elsewhere across the UK. During the afternoon and evening, it will become largely dry with clear spells and a frost. And that is how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back to the Great British Breakfast. Good to have you with us this morning. We're going to talk about Army veteran life after the Army, rather, because making the transition from the armed forces to civilian life, it isn't always smooth. A heavily structured lifestyle, which for many involved fighting on the front line, can make switching back to ordinary, or civvy life as they call it, difficult.
But it does also mean that ex-forces personnel often have valuable skills which can make them exceptional in a commercial environment. John Hoyle was a captain in the British Army, leading a platoon of Scots Guardsmen in Iraq and Germany before returning to do ceremonial duties at Buckingham Palace.
Yeah. After leaving the army, he spotted an opportunity to address the decline of the high street and founded the digital store Souk. Well, on Friday, he only went and won Innovator of the Year at the Ex-Forces in Business Awards. That's the world's biggest celebration of ex-military in second careers at the O2 Arena. And we're delighted to say that John joins us in the studio this morning. John, very good morning to you. Thank you for coming in to speak to us.
Thanks for having me.
And congratulations on your award. How does it feel?
Oh, it's brilliant to be recognised by the Army. I'm really proud of that service. And obviously it's great to promote this business that's changing the way we approach the high street.
So tell us what Souk is, Souk Spaces, and what inspired it and how you've turned this into like a really positive thing for a kind of, well, dying concept, the high street.
Yeah, I mean, I've moved into a sector that everyone thinks is over, but our belief is that physical space has a really bright future. Our high streets have got tons of empty assets that we think we can repurpose. My background post-army is being a landlord, and the relationship between landlords and tenants has been a really challenging one for a long time. So what I've done is created a business that rents space by the hour. We rent time, not space, effectively. And it means that different people can use the same space at the right times of the week for whatever they need. Because let's face it, if you're selling, apparel or clothes, fashion retail, you don't need to shop on a Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday because no one's shopping. So with our model, they can be there on a Friday and a Saturday, and then it can be repurposed for the community, for amenity, for health, for event space, or whatever else.
So just to clarify, different retailers are using the same shop on different days of the week?
Yeah, we've created a device that allows an agile approach to retail. So you're not paying for 7 days a week, but you are achieving the same goals in a much shorter space of time.
How are you doing that?
So we have an amazing device, which is our fit out, that goes into each space. Yeah. It's completely digitally enabled, and using Canva, which is an Australian sort of Photoshop unicorn, you can deploy digital content to the walls. So it
looks a bit like this.
It looks just
in
like
terms
this,
of
actually.
the store. Yeah.
It looks much cooler than this. You can put whatever content you want, and at the touch of a button, your shop looks fit for whatever purpose you want it for. So the Gen Z social media crew are loving us. Lots of influencers, lots of Depop sellers. We're also working with brands like Uber, MasterCard, Radley, which is a traditional high street store.
Yeah. So you're smashing it essentially, and you're getting you've got your stores now in really prominent places: Oxford Street, South Molton Street. But that's not saying you haven't been through a few challenges, because launching a startup during a lockdown when people aren't going out and about onto high streets anyway must have been difficult. Do you feel like the government's doing enough to support tech startups like yours and indeed to try and revive the high street?
Well, I mean, the first thing to say is, it's been a really challenging time. We've been shut for nearly 2 years of our existence. I'm really proud that we're proving through nearly £1 million of sales that in the worst retail environment in living memory, that this new model can work. Government support is always welcome. I mean, the one thing I would appeal to Rishi to do is address business rates. They are a huge problem.
We hear this a lot
across the UK.
Yeah. And you won this award, or rather these awards that are given out. I was looking at it for strong synergies, these award ceremonies, strong synergies between military values and business excellence. What did you learn in the army in serving that has served you well in business?
Oh, well, I think probably, I suppose, leadership. I mean, being an army officer is about trusting people who are often way more experienced than you. You leave Sandhurst as an officer and you're in charge of 30 guys straight off the bat. The platoon sergeant of which is probably 15 years more experienced, tougher than you, has the respect of all of the guys. And a big part of leadership is knowing how to manage people like that, who are basically better than you and know when to pull them in when they're doing something that doesn't work. And that is exactly what startup like is life, because I don't know everything and I'm on a journey where I can only see so far. So you have to trust in people, make the right decisions at the right
So, and do you think that's right then, that people who come from the military have got a kind of unique ability to adapt and sort of, you know, find opportunities where civilians like us, well, we're journalists, so I think we're kind of in the same kind of bracket when it comes to that. But do you think it has helped you transition out of the army into civilian life? And did you find that transition hard?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is hard.
Yeah.
You go from a very structured place to a completely a place where no one really cares about what you've done. I mean, one of the things that always surprised and disappointed me, you know, I came back from Iraq, no one cared. You know, life was going on as normal. I think veterans do feel undervalued, and the experience is undervalued. But and that's a shame, because there are all these skills that we're describing that allow you to thrive within all sorts of environment and think slightly differently to people who've been through the mill of whatever profession.
Yeah, not just because of this. Yeah, but it's not just the value like that you have with those skills to society. It's also the fact you made an enormous sacrifice and put your life on the line, and probably went through some pretty unpleasant experiences while serving in Iraq, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, I think that sacrifice is unfortunately just irrelevant to commercial life, but it's something that allows you to have a perspective on the civilian world that I think is priceless, because I don't get, you know, upset and nervous about things, because in the perspective of what you do in somewhere like Iraq, it's just not that relevant.
Yeah. Did you enjoy it?
Go on.
I was going to say, did you enjoy your time in the army?
I loved it. It was fantastic. I had a brilliant suite of, you know, the pride of leading a platoon war fighting in Iraq, even though I have, you know, major reservations about that, let's call it misadventure in foreign policy. And I also got to do some fun things. You know, it's great fun coming back from doing something like that and standing outside the palace and enjoying that very odd but really unique insight into British life.
Yeah, the ceremonial stuff, the sort of pomp and ceremony, which ultimately seduced your wife, impressed her enough, didn't it? She loved seeing you in your uniform.
Yeah,
Was that with the hat on? Were you one of the...
With the best.
One of the perks of ceremonial duties is that you can invite people to lunch or dinner in the palace, and there aren't many people I've met that say no to that, including my wife, and the rest was history.
That was the first date?
No, I think not the first.
I was going to say, do you fancy a drink? Whereabouts? Well, Buckingham. I know this nice place in West London. Yeah, exactly. It's quite swish, Buckingham Palace, yeah.
John Hoyle, founder of Souk Spaces. Lovely to talk to you. Thanks so much for coming in on Sunday morning.
Thanks,
really
John.
interesting to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you. You're watching The Great British Breakfast. It is 9:30. We're going to go back to talking about COVID now, because doctors and nurses across the UK say they are unable to treat someone seriously ill. Patients, as new figures show that more than 90% of COVID patients requiring the most specialist care are unvaccinated.
Yeah, at the same time, NHS England has told GPs routine health checks for the over 75s and for new patients may have to be deferred to enable them to concentrate on the vaccination programme. We're joined now by Dr Ken Aswani, who is the chair of the NHS Waltham Forest Clinical Commissioning Group. A very good morning to you. A whole heap of pressure. Hopefully he's there. We can be joined by him in just a second. He's so busy trying to set up the booster programme.
He needs a boost himself to get on the screen. There he is.
Delay it. There he is. Hi, thanks for joining us. Look, huge amount of pressure being heaped on you by the government. The booster being laid out as our first line of defence against the Omicron variant.
Yes, I mean, I think that we are having to prioritise. I mean, there is the booster programme, but there's also the other work streams that actually increase during winter. So we have the flu vaccination campaign. We also have an increased viral infections coming in, particularly in children. We're getting this what's called RS virus, and so that kind of pressure is sort of increasing. But remember, we also have the backlog from COVID, which we need to manage, particularly long-term conditions such as diabetes and high blood pressure, and making sure we pick up high-risk patients such as cancer. So this initiative is just making sure that we prioritise the right areas, so the patients that need care do get care, and areas that perhaps can be delayed or we don't need to do immediately, like administration or a very routine health check. If that's delayed for a month or 6 weeks, that does work, but it may ensure that we don't miss conditions and do catch up as well.
The backlog is growing.
Yeah, I think very much so. I mean, we very much hear about the waiting lists in hospital. That tends to be well publicised. But we also have backlogs in primary care in GPs. So, for example, if somebody has heart conditions or asthma, we normally do very regular reviews, and we're definitely keeping up. But inevitably, there is some backlog that's built into the system that is important for us to catch up. Because the thing about we don't want to just concentrate on COVID, because a lot of the problem and the illness tends to be what we call the non-COVID conditions, so long-term conditions. So we don't want patients with blood pressure or their heart condition not controlled, because that will catch up very soon.
And are you seeing increased problems with general health then in patients because you've had to prioritise vaccination so much over the last year?
We are seeing increased problems with patients which are non-COVID, and there are a number of reasons for that. Patients, certainly when the pandemic first started, they stayed away from seeking medical help, and patients are still doing that. And we strongly urge, if patients have urgent symptoms, that they seek help early, because last thing we want is late diagnosis of cancer, or they ignore their sort of heart failure conditions or COPD. So it's important those conditions are managed, but we don't want patients to leave it delayed. But we are noticing that, and if there's one message we get across to patients, is that if you have long-term conditions or you've got worrying symptoms, do seek help early. I mean, the health service is fully open, and we're delighted to make sure that patients are managed promptly. Because it's much harder to catch up down the road if you have a year or two of sort of not very good care. Then your outcomes are reduced, and we definitely want to avoid that. So, irrespective of COVID, all the other services that are necessary will absolutely continue.
Yeah, are you feeling under pressure at the moment?
Yes, I mean, at the moment, I think myself and my colleagues would say that there is a huge amount of pressure out there, and it was actually surprising. It's the busiest it's ever been, and I think that was partly because there was a lot of sort of people didn't consult the doctor before, and now feel it's sort of time to do that. And inevitably, what we've noticed is that level of anxiety, let's call it health anxiety, has increased. So the pressure is absolutely huge, but we have ways of sort of managing this, and eventually it will settle down. We just want to make sure that we look after the patients, we don't miss important conditions, but also we work with patients. A lot of time, for example, patients can monitor their blood pressure at home. We can say, okay, look, just text us or email the readings, and we can help manage in that way. So this shared ownership, I think, has probably been sort of one of the unintended benefits of how we work, and we can also keep in touch with patients remotely. We've got much better mechanisms of doing that.
And just lastly, Dr. Aswani, I just want to ask you a question. The front of the Times is running a piece about doctors and nurses feeling frustrated that the hospitals are filling up with people who are unvaccinated, and it's delaying things like operations. We're hearing from NHS England that it's, I think, 90% of critical care filled with people who haven't been vaccinated. And I just wonder, with the Hippocratic Oath and everything that doctors sign up to do, which is to give treatment without judgment, if that is ever something that you struggle with, given that you see it then having a direct consequence on other patients and finite resources?
No, I think that's absolutely right. It is an ethical dilemma. I think the fundamental duty of the doctor is to treat without judgment. And, there's no sort of scenario that I think patients should be refused care, because they made a particular decision. I think it is much more sort of wider sort of decision in terms of how we increase the vaccination rate and actually protect everyone, because it does have an impact on all of us. But it's a question of how we persuade and keep people safe. Clearly, sort of social care workers, care home workers, and now soon the health workers, it's going to be compulsory for them to have vaccination. So that we can take a targeted approach. And if we can get increased vaccination uptake, then that is going to be important, but I think we can't get into a situation where we say, if you fall into a certain category that you don't get treatment. I mean, I think that will be going too far, I think. But it is an important challenge that's not going to go away too quickly. So I think we're going to have to increasingly find sort of solutions and just be more focused and persuading more people.
Yeah. Dr. Ken Aswani, really good to talk to you this morning. Thank you so much. It is 9:38. You're watching The Great British Breakfast. Paul Coit, Chelsea need a bit of a booster programme, don't they?
They do, and we've got a managerial heavyweight coming up very shortly. Legendary football manager, and someone that did quite well in I'm a Celebrity as well a couple of years ago. The great Harry Redknapp took at all things Spurs and West Ham, and probably will stick with football. Coming up in a second.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Well, good morning. West Ham dealt Chelsea a serious dent to their title hopes, although they did their own top four aspirations quite good. After a 5-goal thriller at the London Stadium yesterday, late goal from Arthur Masuaku gave West Ham the victory, even though he admitted he didn't even mean to score. The loss leaves Chelsea in third, but still only 2 points behind the new league leaders, Manchester City. Talking of which, Man City claimed the top spot of the Premier League then with a convincing win over Claudio Ranieri's Watford. Bernardo Silva scored twice and put in a man-of-the-match display to help the English reigning champions take all 3 points back to Manchester. And Pep Guardiola said after the game that his side had reached their highest standard as they reclaimed the top spot for the first time since they won the league last May. Now, in other games, seemed to be late goals everywhere. It really was a strange night and a strange day. Lone Callum Wilson goal gave Newcastle their first win over relegation rivals Burnley. Neil Maupay scored in the 98th minute to salvage a point for Brighton in the South Coast derby against Southampton yesterday as they drew 1-1. Divock Origi scored a last-minute winner to sink poor Wolverhampton Wanderers. I say that, but nobody likes to lose to a last-minute winner at Molineux as Liverpool won that game 1-0. Now, today's games see 3 matches. They kick off at 2 o'clock. Leeds square off with former Championship rivals Brentford today. Ralph Rangnick will take his first game in charge of Manchester United for their clash with Crystal Palace. And Tottenham Hotspur will play bottom-placed Norwich City. The late game is the 4:30 match, and that's Steven Gerrard facing his former manager Brendan Rodgers as Aston Villa face Leicester, while Everton and Arsenal fans got to wait till tomorrow to see their teams meet. Now, one man who has shockingly been out of the headlines for the last few weeks is Harry Kane. Spurs manager Antonio Conte was speaking about his striker's less than perfect season.
Harry, and as I said yesterday, played a really good game. He was in the situation that we scored, and he had also a good chance to score. But it's important, I think, to have chance to score, and we are improving a lot under this aspect. I'm sure that Harry is going to score many goals, but for sure, I'm sure that he's going to have a good performance in the same way that he had against Brentford, but against every team that we played. I'm very pleased for the way that he's playing, and then I know that the striker wants to score.
So from one legendary Harry to another, let's look ahead to today's Premier League action with the former West Ham, Portsmouth, Queen's Park Rangers, and of course Tottenham Hotspur manager, the legendary Harry Redknapp. Morning, Harry.
Paul, good morning. How are you?
Very well. Really good to see you. You know, all this talk about Harry Kane. I mean, are people just looking too deep into this? Everybody has a little off form every now and again. What do you think's going on with Harry?
I think he's a fantastic player, Paul. You know, he's just a great professional. I watched even the other night. I watched the game, and he hit a couple of passes there were just incredible. And he'll go on a run of scoring goals. He'll end up with his goal tally again up there around about the 20 mark by the end of the season. He's just one of those players, you know. And he scored the goals in the internationals the other week for England. I'm sure he'll start hitting the back of the net for Tottenham.
Is the thing because he's almost trying to be all things to all men with the Spurs side that was slightly underperforming? He's dropping deep. He's probably the best midfielder Spurs have got, as well as the best striker. He's probably the best. He's probably the best defender as well. He's just such a good player.
Yeah, he's just a complete all-round player. But maybe he does need to be a bit more selfish, get himself in the box, maybe not want to come and link up play so much. And spend more time in the 18-yard box, and if he does that, he'll get back to scoring goals. But even when he picks it up deep and runs with it, he always looks like he might score. You know, he's just a great talent. I couldn't criticise him in any shape or form. I think he's fantastic.
Yeah, me too. Let's talk about the team, Harry, and how you think they're doing at the moment. You know, I'm thinking back of when you took over from One Day Ramos, and it seemed like it a pretty unhappy team. You came in, the players seemed happier, they started playing better. How does that relate to what's going on with Antonio Conte? Because it's almost like, you know, he's going to make them work a lot harder and they don't know what's hit them at the moment.
Yeah, no, listen, I think he'll be good. But it's like everything, Paul, you know, he needs backing. They need good recruitment, and that's where the people who are responsible for bringing the players in come into action. Really, it's their responsibility to give him the talent that he needs to work with on the training pitch, because he's a top coach. But most importantly, you need top players to be a successful team. And I'm sure, you know, come the transfer market in January, he might do a bit of business, get one or two in. And I think it's only a matter of time before he starts to look to really push for a top four spot again. I think they've got every chance of making the top four even this year. I think West Ham are going to be right there. They're in great form. But certainly I see Tottenham being a real contender along with Man United for the top four position again. There's every chance they could do it.
Now, when it comes to transfers, of course, you know, we talk about players coming in. But what about when it comes to players leaving, and how does it work? And how did it work with you as well? Because there's obviously going to be players that Antonio Conte doesn't fancy and think, you know, he doesn't really have a future here. You've got to get the price right, actually, to sell them, or they end up sticking around, I guess, and then they're just adding to the wage bill, and you don't want them around.
No, I mean, it's a difficult one. You've got to have somebody who wants them first and foremost. And they've got lots of players there that I would think would be in demand by other clubs. You know, maybe they're not quite at where Tottenham want to be, but I'm sure Conte's already made up his mind about the people that he sees going forward and building the club for the future. So there will be some comings and goings, I'm sure, in the transfer window. But you've got lads who've come in, like Skip did well the other night. You know, he was on loan at Norwich last season. You know, he could establish himself in the team. Who knows? I mean, he's got the opportunity. But they've got other players who are on the fringe, like Harry Winks. You know, is he going to be part of the plans? If he's not, then he'll certainly do a great job for somebody else in the Premier League. So they've got lots of players that I'm sure they can shift if they want to raise some money as well. So it'll be interesting times at Tottenham, I think. But I certainly think they've got the right man in position to take the club forward in Conte. I think he'll do a great job.
Now, let's move on to another club close to your heart, and that's West Ham United. Looking very good for them. I mean, I remember as a kid the old days when you'd say that West Ham will go down with the Christmas decorations. I don't know whether this could happen this time, though, Harry.
Absolutely not. West Ham look fantastic. I mean, David's gone back there, David Moyes, and done an amazing job. I mean, however, what a turnaround in a football club. You know, we all look back. It was only seemed 10 minutes ago that they were running on the pitch and attacking the director's box with David Sullivan in there, and it was horrendous scenes at the London Stadium. Now it's a different world. I mean, they're singing at the end of yesterday's game, the crowd singing "I'm Forever Blowing Bubbles." It was just an amazing atmosphere, and it's great to see. They really are a team and a club on the up at the moment. So all things look good at West Ham. Let's hope they can sustain that. And again, they've got a big chance this year of making the top 4 position. I wouldn't write them off for sure.
And finally, the big question then, who's going to win? Is it going to be David Ginola? He's not you, though, is he?
No, he's better looking than me, that's for sure.
Oh, I don't believe that for a second.
Yeah, I think my missus is probably voting for him, like most women. But no, I'd love to see. He's a great guy, isn't he? You know, I mean, I've got to know him. I tried to sign him actually when I was manager at Portsmouth, and he's a great guy. So yeah, he's done well on there. It would be interesting to see who wins it, but he's got as good a chance as anybody, I'm sure.
Harry, always good to see you. Thanks a lot for your time.
Paul, great job.
Thanks a lot. Enjoy the games, Harry Redknapp. That's it for the sport for now. Back to Paul and Isabel.
Good stuff, Paul, and Harry as well. Now, on to all things entertainment. Ed Sheeran and Elton John have, of course, released the video for their festive track called Merry Christmas. The pair have poked fun and playfully recreated classics by Mariah Carey, Wham, Wizzard, and the one and only Shakin' Stevens.
Yeah, entertainment reporter Stephanie Tecchi is here to give us the lowdown. Stephanie, is it any good?
It's a grower. It's one of those,
that never sounds good, does it?
It's one of those tracks. When I first heard it, I was like, come on, we've got Ed and we've got Elton. I'm expecting a big Christmas classic. And it was like, second, third play, I was like, OK, by Christmas Day, I might be playing it. It might be a winner. But it's the video that I think does it for me and will make it a hit with fans. Because obviously, you do see Ed Sheeran dressed as Mariah Carey. Not an image anyone's going to forget anytime soon. And they've recreated all these Christmas classics, which is quite fun. But the good thing about the track, it is for a good cause. So the profits will be going to Elton John's Aid Foundation and also Ed's Suffolk Music Foundation. So I think behind all of that, there is a good cause for the track, which makes it more catchy. But I thought maybe they could have done a bit better.
Yeah, well, do you know what? With all the Christmas classics around, maybe like Wizard's track, maybe when that came out, people thought, it's not that great anyway, and it had to grow, I don't know.
Yeah, and I think, do you know what happens around Christmas? Everyone's so used to the classics like Mariah Carey. So people, anything
God, that
new,
song by Mariah Carey.
Come on, Paul.
You know, in fact, Mariah Carey herself.
Stop it! Shout range that
You're going to get all our fans coming for you on Twitter now.
Bring it on.
Pop quiz for you, though.
Yeah.
Who has won Christmas #1 the last 3 years? Go.
Oh, no, I don't know
We
this.
didn't know either. Sausage Man. Is that right?
Sausage Roll Man, I think it was.
Sausage Roll Man.
This hurts my
Oh, no,
heart.
hang on, got that wrong.
Lad Baby,
Lad
is that
Baby.
right?
I've never
Sausage
heard
Roll
of Lad
Man.
Baby. Well, you learn something new every day.
Yeah, sorry.
Lad Baby who did the Sausage
We
Roll
just
song.
epically failed all of that.
Anyway, back to more popular culture.
Yes.
Now, this story, I mean, we shouldn't laugh because Richard E. Grant is suffering with us mere mortals that have to go to holiday inns to quarantine when we come back from Red List. But these celebs, they don't like it when they're in 2-star hotels or whatever.
No celeb is above the quarantine law, as Richard E. Grant is proving. He's been keeping his fans updated. Unfortunate for him, he went to South Africa to see his mum. She's 90 years old, before Christmas. He said he tried to get on at least 10 flights to get back to the UK before South Africa went on the Red List, and unfortunately it didn't happen. So right now he's staying at the 4-star Gatwick Holiday Inn.
Okay, 4-star.
You would think that would mean he was in luxury. He's been horrified. He's been having tuna and cucumber sandwiches, sausage casserole and chips, which he said elsewhere would have cost under £30. He sent pictures of it online, and to be honest,
It's £2.5 grand for the pleasure, isn't it? And is he able to get any exercise?
No, and he's there. And you know what? I do feel sorry for him because he recently lost his wife a few months ago. So I can't imagine to be in that situation as well. It's just not what he probably wants. And he's saying there's another Holiday Inn nearby, which is £98 £88. Same kind of food. So why is he paying £228 in this hotel, which is poor conditions?
Yeah.
He says he feels like he's being punished by the government.
Yeah, with hell and I.
Yeah.
Right, Alec Baldwin as well.
Yeah,
He's given another he's given his first interview this week.
It is. A couple of weeks ago, he done this impromptu press interview when he was out with his wife, but this was a proper Hollywood's kind of sheen and polish interview, and he's spoken about really what happened on that day. And, you know, he said again, he doesn't take no responsibility for her death. He says that I thought I had a gun, which was a cold gun, which means there was no bullets in there, or maybe dummy bullets in there. And he says that he thinks his career in Hollywood is over. But to be honest, I can still, like, watching that interview, you can kind of tell he still feels a bit traumatised, because he's like, I don't care. I really don't care.
He's had such a colourful private life, hasn't he? Is there much public sympathy stateside for him? How does he come out of this interview?
I don't...
A bit sort of self-pitying.
I don't think it is self-pitying, because he still seems cocky Alec Baldwin in that interview. So I think people are still not going to forget that a life has been taken, a mother's been taken away from her children and her husband. And, you know, the fact he's not really taking responsibility for it is still... It's a bit controversial, you know. He said that when he first pulled the gun, he didn't know at least for an hour that she had actually died. He thought it could have been something else. But it's good to hear all the facts and what's actually happened from his perspective. But how it ends up for him, I don't know. But as well, someone does need to take responsibility, and I don't know who that's going to be. So I think there's going to be much more coming from this case over the next few weeks / months.
Yeah, it's got a lot more to play out. Cheryl Cole's finished her podcast.
Oh, yeah, so Cheryl, she had a podcast which was You, Me, R&B with Cheryl. It did cause a lot of controversy when it came out, because a lot of people saying it should go to someone who actually, you know, cares about R&B and who's experienced with R&B.
She does care about R&B, in her defence. Like, she grew up doing all the dancing and everything, but she's just not black. That was the main opposition to it, right? Yeah.
That is it. I'm not going to lie. That was the main thing which caused a big furore when she did come out.
Right.
And so after 4 episodes, she says it doesn't feel right for her to record anymore. And it's obviously due to Sarah Hardin's passing from breast cancer. And they were very close. And I think, obviously, the grief has taken Cheryl on her own journey. She pulled out from a festival earlier on this year.
Was she performing the day of or the day before, or due to perform the day? There was some
the day
timing
after,
was really
it was right near, and she couldn't do it. And recently was Sarah's 40th birthday, and I can understand why she's done it. You know, with a podcast, you have to, you know, especially as you're not on TV or whatever, you have to bring that energy through your voice. And if you're not feeling it, then, you know, there's not much you can do.
So sad.
Yeah, and just very quickly, in 20 seconds, I'm a celeb.
OK, tonight we're going to see the first campmate leave the castle.
Who's it going to be?
Oh, I have a feeling it might be Dame Arlene Phillips. I just feel like she's like a nice little grandma of the camp, but we want people who are going to be sent in to do trials and all that rest for the remainder of the week or so.
Yeah.
So I think we might be saying goodbye to her.
Oh, come on, Arlene, they'll be saying.
Come on, Arlene. Well, we're going to say goodbye to you now, Stephanie.
You
thank you very much
guys.
indeed for coming in. And we're going to say goodbye to you, because that is it from Great British Breakfast this morning. Simon and Rosie will be here tomorrow from 6 o'clock. But coming up after this, it's the political correction. Here's the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Well, the UK is looking rather cloudy and showery in the east, but brighter in the west. Let's take a look at the details. A few showers will feed into Cornwall in the brisk northerly wind, but elsewhere across southwest England, it's dry with some sunshine. It will feel chilly, though, in the breeze. Meanwhile, a much cloudier day is expected across the southeast of England, and here it will be rather showery too, with a gusty northerly wind. Pembrokeshire could catch an isolated shower, but for the rest of Wales, it's looking dry and bright, albeit quite chilly and breezy here too. Moving over to the Midlands, we can expect an east to west split. Towards the east, there'll be a fair amount of cloud giving some showers, whereas further west, most places should stay dry with some bright weather at times. In the northeast, showers could merge to give some more persistent rain with hill snow. Across this part of the country, the wind will begin to ease, so it won't feel quite as cold. Some showers will continue to feed into the east and southeast of Scotland. But for the rest of the country, there'll be lots of sunshine around. Looking at Northern Ireland, it's likely to see the sunniest weather of all, though, and the wind, I should say, will be noticeably lighter than elsewhere across the UK. During the afternoon and evening, it will become largely dry with clear spells and a frost. And that is how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you